Hello! Do not adjust your streaming screens. You're having a crisis. It is I, Crisis with a K, coming to you live from a rather beautiful, though chilly morning here in New Zealand. And we are here to talk about the comics of the week, not this week, but a week from a month ago, because that is how far behind I am in talking about comics, but that's okay, because comics will be here forever. We could be talking about comics from 1944, and I'm sure there's a lot of them that we had not read. So I'm going to talk about each of the comics that I've read, over 50, as well as all the other releases out in the week, but of, what week is it? May 7th. But first, we always start with a bang, and that bang is me talking about my 2025 comic series power ranking. So here we go. And also, please tell me if you can't see me or can't hear me, because I have no way of knowing these things. So, these are my top 12, and honestly, there's not too many shakeups this week, except for we have one that was previously in the top 12, then wasn't in the top 12, and is back again. Why? You're going to find out today, because one of the things dropped out. So now we have Jason Aaron and Juan Ferreira back in the top 12 at number 12 with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Then we have Eddie Brock Carnage, a delightful slice of villainy from Marvel and Charles Soule. Then we have Ghostbox, which wrapped up in last week's release as an indie release on Comixology that I urge you to read. Batman and Detective Comics, this Al Ewing annual, put it over the top. Doctor Strange of Asgard, Jump Scare, which we get to talk about this week, moving up a spot. Solomon Kane from Titan Comics, and Robert Howard creation that I urge you to check out. The art from Patrick Zurcher is amazing. The Tin Can Society from Rick Remender's Giant Generator, written by Peter Warren with art from Francesco Mobley. The Nice House by the Sea, as we know, is my entire personality. And then my big, I think, top 3 is where we are now. The Avengers by Jed MacKay, Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Waters and Hayden Sherman, and Trey O'Farrell on colors. And then, of course, at number 1, Kelly Sue DeConnick's FML with David Lopez, Chris Peter, and Clayton Kells. Look at me finishing that in a minute. Look at that. Okay. But wait, that's not all. Because next, we talk about my top picks of the week, and then we get into the casual conversation. Is it casual now? We'll find out. So let's talk about my DC pick of the week. And again, these all originate on crushingcrisis.com, where I write about all of them. I have some D&D dice floating around. These are my original. I'm sorry, I'm a little ADHD right now. Let's put down the dice. Every week on Crushing Crisis, I talk about the releases for the next week, and that's how I pick what my picks will be. So let's just start the timer again, because that was all preamble. So my DC pick of the week, I thought would be Birds of Prey, because I loved the last issue of Birds of Prey. It ended on a terrific cliffhanger, and I thought, well, surely this one is going to be my favorite of the week. Just edging it out in a shocking, shocking twist was Justice League: The Atom Project, which has been floating in the okay zone, but really blew me away on this May 7th week of releases. For Marvel, my pick of the week was Fantastic Four Fanfare. It just had such a cool creator lineup on it of Mark Waid, Alan Davis, and Andrew Wheeler that I was just so excited. It was good, and I enjoyed it, but I am finally enjoying The Amazing Spider-Man as it comes out, probably for the first time since 2017, 2018, so really excited to talk about that. At Image, I'm not caught up on Kaya yet, which would have been my pick of the week. So since I'm not, I picked this new Robert Kirkman book, Blood and Thunder, because it reminded me of a sci-fi take on another book I love from Image, Fair Lady. And actually, this was my Image pick of the week. I was obsessed. And then Indie, I picked Jump Scare, which I love. I almost picked Plague House number 2 because I really, really like that. But again, a shocker, Lady Baltimore and the Hellboy universe, I just fell totally in love with. So I have a lot of things to talk to you about this week, and actually, spoiler alert, this was my favorite week of comic releases so far in 2025. Like, you all know, I keep my running average every week. This week spanked the running average of all of the other weeks so far. So you're going to hear some ranting today, but mostly raving. I was raving privately to Max. We often have our own rave about comic books. And of course, Max read these a month ago. Max Appleman, who just put up a new Beetle Bop on his channel, Taxman, a very famous George Harrison song. Please go watch it. We like when you watch 4 to 6 times each. That's ideal. But I was raving to Max, and I just kept raving, and I kept saying, Max, the comics are good. I don't know what to do with myself. The comics are good. Okay. So let's go back and say hi to some folks, and that's what we do. Then there's going to be a moment of crisis, which I truly have no idea what it's going to be. And then we're going to talk about all of these amazing comic books that I love so much. So Bunkmaster B, upkeeping his streak of being one of the first 3 commenters. He has some very busy weekends. He really keeps that schedule packed. So he is on the road to Pittsburgh, but he is saying hello. Matt H also saying hello. Everybody was saying that it's Father's Day. In New Zealand, Father's Day is in September. Mother's Day is the same though. So I've totally forgotten, and I don't celebrate Father's Day particularly for myself or anybody else. And so I was like, the what day? Like it almost like the gears in my head were like grinding, trying to make sense of this thing that everybody was saying. Logan Wayne, hello to you. Super job, one of our regulars, saying it is crushing time and promising not to talk quite as much about Zenoscope this week, although there is a Zenoscope book, so we can't help ourselves. Logan Wayne saying hello, just to Super job, not to me, but that's okay, I won't take it personally. Rapto Rancher, Jarn as a warm-up before the stream, I should just look directly in the camera and go, Jarn Pauls, until the lips and the tongue and the tip of the teeth and the tongue or whatever, lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue start working. Mall360 saying hello, another awesome Saturday show. Patrick Borgeld, who is joining me in the No Father's Day celebration today, so at least there's just the one. Hanko, I got to talk to a little bit before the show. Edwin Billiot is here, looking forward to another entertaining live stream. I can't promise entertainment, but it is live Saturday morning. Fan is here. Helen popping in to say hi. We love seeing Helen in her profile pic, which I'm still not sure is Laura Kinney or if it's Gabby, but it's one of the two. Ryan Bragg is here. James Abel is still loading. Purple Monkey loading. I almost launched into a Tori Amos story there about purple monkeys. Richard Fearing saying hello. Jamie C47, who we are going to gently and with intense kindness and love bully until he has a profile picture, because that helps me put names to faces, but I'm still very happy to see you here, Jamie C. And Lance McNair, it's great to have you live. And there's only 2 Star Wars books to talk about this week, but I know we contain multitudes, not just Star Wars. Kane is here, and Andrew Ovoida is here. Pity Ma, hello to you. Max, whose channel I just told you to go and view. Johnny is here live from, I believe, New York. It is Sunday afternoon. And did I say hello to everybody? I think I said hello to Patrick Borgeld. Fifth of Jack Gaming is here. Taylor Maid, hello to you. Andrew, I have been listening to the new Garbage album. It is not as much for me. It's a little too abstract. I like my garbage tight and poppy. However, the next week, or maybe it was the previous week, Torn Breaks came out with a new album. And I'm a massive, massive Torn Breaks fan. And that album pleased me front to back. So I've mostly been spinning that. I am still, as with comics, I'm behind on music. I'm still listening to the end of my 2024 music. I think I have about 5 days of music left to listen to, which sounds easy, except for I only get through like an hour or 2 of music a day because I'm constantly replaying all the tracks that I like. The most recent thing I listened to that I really, really love was Andrew Bird, who was originally a violinist in Squirrel Nut Zippers, who sang Hell in the Afterlife. He is now singer-songwriter and violinist, and he did a note-for-note cover of the entire Buckingham Nicks album. If you know that Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham made an album before they were in Fleetwood Mac that was very Fleetwood Mac-y, but just the two of them, so no amazing drums or piano. And Andrew Bird did a note-for-note cover of it. I forget, it's with a woman who did all the Stevie Nicks parts, and I unfortunately forget her name. And I actually like it way, way better than the original. It's transfixing, so I've been listening to it on a loop. The first track especially is really, really good. Sidebar, I told you I'm a little ADHD today. Michael Weslius is here and saying hello. Novarg with an illustration in his profile picture that I love. Michael Menaville, good evening. Always enjoy listening to my comics takes. Thank you so much, sir. And I think I've said hello to... Oh, yeah. You know, Jarl, when I was first collected editions in 2010, one of the first things I splurged on was Fantastic Four Masterworks, which my Masterworks are up there. And I used to just keep it on my bedside table, and I was reading Fantastic Four from the beginning. I don't remember if I got all the way up to 50. It was before the great database of reading began. But yeah, that early Fantastic Four is so, so great. So I just happened to have this here because I was playing D&D with the college friends. This is my original D20 from the 90s when I first played Dungeons and Dragons. So it's, you know, we clearly have things older in my house than the 90s, but this is one of my kind of prized personal possessions, and I really thought I had lost it. I couldn't find it here for years, and I randomly opened a box down in the stacks in the garage, and there it was. So I happen to have that on my desk. Okay, well, I guess now we're gonna have a moment of crisis. What is that going to be? I don't know. That's why it's a moment of crisis. Oh, I guess maybe I have one. Okay, so this weekend, where do I begin this? ADHD. This weekend, Kid Crisis watched a movie. She does not get a ton of screen time. I don't think any human being needs to watch a lot of television, and certainly not a child. And so she did not like grow up on a screen. She didn't have a tablet. We didn't do like, movies as babysitters. She's always watched a relatively limited amount of screen. But now that she's older, she watches a movie usually on the weekends. And she, so if you only get 52 movies a year, you got to be choosy, and then you have some things you might want to repeat. So there's plenty of things she hasn't seen. And I was telling her this weekend, I was like, you should watch some like classic 90s Disney. She's seen a lot of the like 40s and 50s and 60s Disney. She's, Robin Hood, Peter Pan, Dumbo, but she hasn't seen a lot of the 90s classics. And I was like, you should watch Little Mermaid. And she was, I had to like drag her kicking and screaming. If she didn't want to watch it, she wouldn't have to watch it. But I kept being like, are you sure? It has really good music. And eventually she turned it on, and the laughter was, of course, raucous. Although, much like me, Kid Crisis is like, is this a kissing book? Because Little Mermaid is very much about a girl just in pursuit of a guy. And of course, you can imagine a child raised by me finds that a little bit regressive. And so we had a conversation about that. But it really made me think about this idea of preconceived notions. And that was already floating around in my head a lot this weekend as I was reading the books this weekend. Because, comics want you to have a preconceived notion. That's why they market the way that they do. That's why they put so much information in the solicits. That's why they have covers that often advertise what the big twist is inside of the issue. They're trying to get you to have an opinion before you pick up the comic. And actually, I think it's really, really hard to just pick up a comic and read it without knowing anything about it these days. It's really, really hard unless you totally just like cover your eyes and click on a file or pick something off the shelf, because even the cover is meant to make you feel that way. And it's really interesting because that crosses across properties we know well and things we don't know at all. So, of course, when I pick up a Hellboy book, like, I have opinions on that Hellboy book. I looked at this Lady Baltimore, and, I've read a lot of these Hellboy universe books recently, and although maybe Lady Baltimore is like Hellboy universe adjacent, I forget if Baltimore is in the Hellboy universe. But anyway, I thought I knew what that was going to be. And I think that that is true for IP. I think that's true for certain creators, certain artists. You've like seen that artist before. And also even a book you don't know at all before. And sometimes I go through the indie books when I look through League of Comic Geeks and I see a cover and I literally judge the book by its cover. Not only to judge it of the art of the cover and the title, but being like, well, that's an indie book, so I definitely know what this is going to be like. And I think that you've seen that my kind of open door policy to comic books all this year has yielded some really big surprises as I've checked out some indie books and found out that I really, 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 really love them. So I was just thinking about how that idea of preconceived notions, it's not just that we're all judgy, right? Like we didn't take the Myers-Briggs assessment and just all come out as J's. It's part of our human behavior that helps us recognize patterns that ultimately in some prior lifetime is probably helping us with safety, right? Like when we were foraging, we had to have pattern recognition of a plant that looked like it might be poisonous, or like a frog to lick or not to lick, as the case might be, right? And, you know, I feel like there's, and I'm not a psychologist, but I do feel like there's this like evolutionary deep-seated pull to look at something for a second and like really form an opinion about it, because that is something that if we were, you know, successful survivors, our brains are programmed to do. But in the modern day, it doesn't serve you well with people, and it doesn't serve you well with TV shows all the time, and it doesn't serve you well with comic books. And I think that a big part of why I do the show, and a big part of why I read as much as I read, is the kind of like deprogram that assumption that I always come to things with based on just the title, just the art, just the creators, and to recalibrate myself to like understand that there's a range of expectations for everything. That character's not always going to be boring. That creator's not always going to be bad. You know, if we look at some of the creators that are in my top 10 and top 12 this year, Jason Aaron, somebody who I had written off for years, I'm loving, and I'm going to talk about today, Rick Remender, somebody who I had written off. So many creators that I kind of thought I was done with. David Baldion, who's been drawing Power Girl that I've been raving about, who I thought I really didn't like up until I gave him another chance in 2020 on X Factor with Leah Williams. So I guess I'm just here with this off the top of the head Moment of Krisis to remind ourselves that often in the modern day, that preconceived notion that we have when we're judging people or TV shows or comic books or albums literally by the cover, it's not going to help us live any longer. It's not. That defense mechanism is not keeping us alive. It's part of the lizard brain, I think, that's just trying to protect ourselves and protect our time. And while our time is important and finite and we only get so much of it, sometimes the most interesting thing that's going to happen to you this week in terms of art is the thing that you least expect. And certainly in my music consumption, every year I say, I'm not going to listen to as many albums. I'm just going to stick to my favorite artists. And then every year I just start randomly picking up things if it just has one genre on it that I love. And it's like female vocalist, I'll try it. Dark wave, let's give it a chance. And some of my favorite things come from that. And I was actually, just as I was with the hair and makeup team glamming up for the show, I was playing a playlist of my favorite music from the past couple of years. And so much of it is music I would have never found had I not just randomly given things a chance, because no one else was talking about it. And so I come to you on this show often as the one person you know who is talking about some of these books, not just Zenoscope, many of the books. I might be the only person talking about them. And I hope it's helping you decide to take a chance on things, because it helps me to take a chance on things every week when I know I have to be here for you. So that is my moment of crisis. We never know what's going to happen. So look, that wrapped up nice and early. Look, we're not even at the 20-minute mark. I will say the internet indicator on my little streaming screen is like looking a little suspicious. So please let me know if it's getting a little bit slower, janky, and I'll ruin everything as I tend to do. Although hopefully no countrywide outages. So let me just pick up some of the things you've said since I started that rant. And if you have any questions, let's try to start talking about comics at like the 25-minute mark. That gives us a solid 8 minutes to rant and rave, which we all know that I will go over. So Jamie C47 was saying early Fantastic Four and Spider-Man are the only Silver Age stuff I really like. Yeah, you know, I like an amount of Silver Age X-Men because I think when it hits, it really hits well. And I think it gets painted with a very broad brush by people who are like, oh, it sucks. It's like, well, no, the first 6 or 7 issues are pretty good. And then issues 14 through 16 that have the first Sentinels are pretty good. Then it starts meandering for a few years. But again, I think that's a very judge a book by its cover preconceived notion thing where people kind of paint with a broad brush. Like a lot of people say the Daredevil Silver Age sucks, but like actually there's a lot of fun stuff in Daredevil Silver Age. It just was the imitation Spider-Man. Like it was never as good as Spider-Man. But I honestly haven't read too much sequential Silver Age Spider-Man. I've read a lot of single issues, especially when I do guides for something like Craven or you know, working on a Green Goblin guide because they appear so much early. But I really would love to sit down and just start sequentially reading Spider-Man from the beginning. And now that these epic lines, some of them are almost complete, or at least almost complete to the 90s, I've been saying to myself for 10 years, you know, when there's 20 volumes in a row, you're just going to sit down and start reading that. Now, do I have time for that? I don't know. But that has always been the intent. Lance saying, kid me having been addicted to television. I was the same too. I had a television schedule. I mean, I read TV Guide, Crisis Lore. I think I've mentioned this before. I read TV Guide cover to cover every single week. As if it was some kind of Bible. But for me, it was the way to like connect with the people in the entertainment industry because there are all the articles and stuff in the front. And then like having memorized the TV sort of gave me a weird power over watching the TV and also in conversation with both the people my age and adults. Is it surprising that I come here and do this every week, given my TV Guide addiction? Is my League of Comic Geeks and Previews addiction any different? Not really. But yeah, I had a TV schedule. I mean, I knew what reruns I watched at 6. I knew which game show I watched at 7. I knew, you know, the shows I was going to watch 8, 9, 10, which nightly news I liked, which late night. I mean, even as a 7-year-old, I was probably watching TV from 4 o'clock when I got home from school to 12 o'clock at night because I had a TV in my room. And I think that I didn't take all negative things from that, but I do think that I probably could have been doing some things that were slightly more productive with my time. So, you know, you always try to parent the next generation, hopefully a little bit better than you were parented yourself. Richard Fearing went to Second and Charles, which I understand to be a bookstore, and picked up 3 complete collections: Black Panther, Man Without Fear, Marvel Knights, Black Widow, and Scarlet Witch by James Robinson. You have a stack of great reading waiting for you, sir. I will say that I went on a little bit of a spree this weekend because I needed to get a couple of boring things for the house. Like I needed like a new laundry basket, but somehow that snowballed into buying so much stuff. So there's going to be another haul around the world soon because I made a truly shocking and potentially inadvisable purchase that is going to have to be shipped here from America. And that will be a haul, I guess. But yeah, I did buy a lot of things this weekend. Little Mermaid is fantastic. Oliver and Co. as well. Hercules, Mulan, Emperor's New Groove. Emperor's New Groove, perfect example, Novarg, of my moment of crisis. I'd always heard like, oh, that was when Disney got boring. That wasn't a good one. So it was like a rainy Saturday. Me and Kid Crisis sat down. I'm like, look, I'm going to sit with you and watch this. I've never seen it before. I don't know what it's about. I thought it was going to be a riff on The Emperor's New Clothes, one of my favorite parables, or fairy tales, whatever. And so I had a totally preconceived notion of what it was going to be. I laughed so hard through every single scene of that movie, and now it's one of the ones we replay the most. So that really was my lesson to like, you cannot judge these Disney movies based on what Disney people tell you is like the good one or the bad one. I know The Emperor's New Groove in the past 5 or 10 years have had like a fan renaissance, because now the fans who watched it as kids are like older and they're like, no, it was great. It was always great. But I didn't know that because people my age, I think, kind of like glossed over it. So I learned that very much. Have I seen all of those? No, I've seen all the ones you just named. I don't love Little Mermaid. I love the music of Little Mermaid. I don't think Little Mermaid is as riotously funny as some of the best TV movies, Disney movies. But I know that like Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast period, and I guess starting with Aladdin, is kind of like the reborn classic era of Disney. I tend to really like older Disney movies that are more episodic in nature. I love Robin Hood. I love, what's the one with the wizard and the Sword in the Stone? That's probably my favorite. And that's very episodic. There's like, it's almost like they made a series of 30-minute cartoons, which is maybe because different people were animating different sections. I don't know. Fun fact, apparently this is the Little Mermaid stream. Now, fun fact, Alan Menken, who did the songs for Little Mermaid, also did the music for Little Shop of Horrors. Little Shop of Horrors. Part of your world is almost a note-for-note copy of Somewhere That's Green. You are right, now that I've heard you say that out loud. Lansing, it's hard to read or watch anything nowadays without having heard about it. Yeah, but you have to turn on the part of your... I don't know, maybe this is just me. Maybe this is like ADHD, neurodivergent brain. But I start extrapolating as soon as I have one little kernel of information about something. And it's really, I do this with friends too. Like they'll tell me a little bit of a story about their life or about something in their life. And I start like building this huge crystalline structure of assumptions about it, which is not a positive habit. But I see one little thing, I see one little clip, I hear one joke, and I try to like extrapolate a whole series of knowledge about it. I do better when I have more information. So I'm really good at that when I've read, 100 issues of comic book or by a certain creator. Really, really bad at that when all I know about a show is seeing like one GIF of that show on social media. Kane, as a Little Mermaid, hold on, it's not coming up. A Little Mermaid fan, I read Disney's Twisted Tale comic based on the prose novel and loved it. Bought the novel, read it, great twist in the book, and Ariel really matures from the events. Part of why I've been pushing Little Mermaid, you made me realize, is because the kid watched The Descendants and she doesn't have an awareness that all of the villains in The Descendants are like from other Disney movies. So I'm like, okay, well, now you need to be acquainted with the Disney movies from whence they came. Of course I like Sixpence None of the Rich. I think I probably own every single song they've ever recorded. Actually, they're one of my well, they might not officially be on my chronology list, but they're like one of those artists. Of course, they did a series of really great covers for soundtracks, but they have a really pleasing sound all on their own. Super Job, the non-Hellboy Magnolia books are called Outerverse. Oh, was that an Outerverse book? I don't know. We'll see when we get to it. Let's see. Next Imaginaut is here. Hello, Next Imaginaut. Novark says, I find it partially hilarious, not particularly, about Europeans, Dutch people especially, that when they pick up a comic book as a cover and get upset when the cover doesn't match the interiors. But I think in the European bande dessinée world, the covers do tend to match the interiors more, don't they? That's always been my impression whenever I read a BD, that the covers, and much like manga, like it might be like colorized more or painted more, but the style of the art tends to be reflective of what's on the inside. And I think it's weird for anybody, even for me as a comic book fan. I tell the story 100 times, so we're not going to recover the well-known, well-trod Crisis lore. But when I came back in 2010, I was used to comics that had covers by their interior artists from the 90s, and even from the 2000s. The few comics I read, which were pretty much exclusively by John Cassaday, Astonishing X-Men and Planetary, always had him drawing covers. So when I came back and I saw covers by people like Greg Land and Addie Groundhog and all these people, I'm like, oh great, comics look like this now. So I think actually, we're the weird ones. This idea that we think the cover shouldn't have to match the interior is weird. Okay. Andrew, avoided Usagi Yojimbo for years, and it's possibly my favorite comic book series ever. Yeah, that is certainly one that I was like, well, it's Ninja Turtles adjacent. And in my mind, okay, Crisis lore, in my mind, Usagi Yojimbo was the flashback past version of Captain Bucky O'Hare. Do you remember that cartoon? I just remember the song was like, Bucky, Captain Bucky O'Hare, or something like that. And I just thought they were all the same rabbit. Assumptions. Okay. I gotta have a favorite soy sauce. Honestly, I mean, we cook Asian-influenced food a lot. I've been sharing recipes, as I think I mentioned last week, and it's struck me that just like half of the things we cook are Asian continent influence recipes or traditional recipes. But I just kind of buy the soy sauce that they have at the Asian Mart. I try to get lower sodium because I do not do well with really salty sauces and things, especially when it's got to go like a couple spoons of it into the marinade of something. Like, it can't be too salty. I go like... But I just get like Lee Kum Kim, which is like the big brand here. I don't have like an actual favorite. I do like the one main brand of sriracha, but then here there's a lot of different srirachas that are all labeled as sriracha, and I have to remember to get the one that I actually like. Am I going to be on tomorrow's Near Mint Condition DC Top 60 live stream? Yes, in 25 hours from now. And have I done any of the slides for that yet? No. So I can tell you what I'm going to be doing the rest of the day after the stream, which is slides. The top 60 is going to shock you, I think. There's a couple that I was like, whoa, really? So, because now I've seen the results now that it's closed. Yeah, please tune in. It's going to be me, Omar, Lars, Jess, and Tiger Eyes, I think. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to just be talking about so many classic DC comics. Really, really, really excited. Jamie saying Neil Adams stuff of X-Men is fantastic art that makes it work for me. Although that's like, well, I guess it never quite is the Bronze Age because they didn't make it that far. It's like, to me, I think of Neil Adams almost exclusively as Bronze Age, even though I know that's a misnomer and he actually was Silver Age. So yes. Have I read any Avatar The Last Airbender comics? I thought of getting all the library editions because I do really like the show. I actually want to read the Korra comics because I like the Korra show a little bit better. It's a little more mature. And I know they kind of got cut off before they got to tell their whole story. And so they officially extended it into the comics. So I'm really, really curious in that. For the weeks when I don't have a particular MOK, Moment of Krisis in mind, would you like to suggest topics? If you want to put like hashtag MOK, ask for things. I do keep sometimes a little file because something I really learned about my particular brand of neurodivergence is that sometimes I need to just write the thing down when it happens in my head. And what's really funny is I've always been like that about songwriting. Like, I know if I'm singing a melody, if I have two words that sound good together, I have to run to a pad, run to a voice note recorder and get it down because that's how songwriting works. That thing might not ever come back to you in that particular way that makes sense ever again. So it's funny because my writer brain understands that. But then when it's like, you should remember to take out the garbage, you should remember to jot down this moment of crisis, you should remember to pay that bill, my brain doesn't work the same way. And a lot of what I've been doing to kind of like resolve and repair and improve myself this year is to just be like, if you can do the thing without totally interrupting your flow, like the D&D dice, if you can just do the thing in the moment, do the thing in the moment. So I do keep a little scratch pad of like MOKs that come up in my mind. That's what we call Moment of Krisis here in the biz. Logan Wayne and I call it. But so yeah, I'm happy to add your ideas to the scratch pad. I was teasing to Logan Wayne on somebody's Discord, probably in your mint condition, that I have an idea for another show coming up, but I have to catch up on these first. But I'm so excited, and it's not a recurring show, but it's something you can all participate in. But I need to get caught up first. Okay, well, we've gone well over the 8 minutes I prescribed, so let's just catch a couple more. Stoops is saying hello and glad that they have not missed it. Pull the lever, Kronk! It's so funny because there's this phenomenon on Drag Race where the younger Rue loves like a pull the lever joke, like there's a trap door, pull the lever, or like they've had a dunk tank recently. There's a lever that RuPaul pulls that like has a chair that catapults people in one of the like mini games. And the queens, starting like almost 10 years ago, would make pull the lever Kronk jokes. And of course, RuPaul is much older than them and me. RuPaul's, decades older than me, and never got the joke. And I didn't either, because I hadn't watched The Emperor's New Groove. I feel like at some point, they like made Michelle Visage watch The Emperor's New Groove to explain it to Rue so that Rue will laugh at the jokes now, because the thing that was happening is the drag kings were making that joke, and it would kill with audiences, because it would it was in such a funny place, and Rue would just be blank because Rue doesn't get humor from like after 1991 generally, and so it was just one of these like rare, not actually very rare, Drag Race disconnects where like there was a younger generation on the show being hilarious, but the show's humor is so rooted in 60s and 70s and 80s humor that it was totally missing. Which is one of the reasons I think Drag Race really appeals to me, because my humor is so rooted in 60s and 70s and 80s humor, possibly from watching all the reruns I used to watch on TV, that like it's very funny to me. And I don't know what it would be like for like a 20-year-old today to be absorbing all of these references to like I Love Lucy and the Carol Burnett Show and Elvira and 1980s game shows and the Golden Girls, because that's like what I grew up on, even though I'm a little bit young, or in some cases way too young to get all of those references. What DC finest should you get? Well, I have all of them so far, although the alphabetical order is suffering a little bit right now because I think I must have moved them all around for a show recently. Gosh, I mean, of course that Batman one is good, but you said you already have that. I mean, the 0 Hour one is great if you've never read 0 Hour, but actually, this is probably the best one. This is the best one that's come out. The Green Arrow one, because it's got Longbow Hunters in it, and then it has the first 8 issues of Mike Grell's run, and it has the crossover that the annuals did with Detective Comics and The Question. I think this is the best DC finest. Green Arrow, what does it say? The Longbow Hunters, which collects from 1987 to 1988. I think that is, in my mind, indisputably the best one that has come out so far. Oh my gosh, you know, sometimes I think we need to just have a chat stream, because I could just keep talking to you. European comics tend to project the art that is also to be found on the interiors. Okay, agreed. All right, well, I think a lot of people are cross-talking. I love, apparently, this Disney topic got you all talking, because everybody's talking to each other, and we love that. Because I love, actually, that, like, I know you all know each other from other channels. Like, it's not like you all just met here. Many of you are also in Nearman Condition, and you're also on Omnidog, and so you know each other. But I kind of like the idea that you are in the comments just hanging out and being friends with each other while I'm on here talking about whatever inane nonsense I'm talking about. That just makes me happy. So I'm happy that you're adding each other. And you know what? I still do. I usually rewatch this Monday and Tuesday nights if I can't go to sleep, but my eyes are like done reading comic books. And so I do actually wind up seeing a lot of your comments because I keep the chat open. And I also see the context of your comments. So if I missed the first time around why you were saying certain things, I understand it the second time. Okay, so let's talk about some comics, shall we? I will still see your comments. As we've known in recent weeks, I've gotten better at keeping track of your comments as I go. So if you're talking about the current book that I'm talking about, I will make an effort to show it on the screen and interact with it if I can. But if you start asking some big, deep, universe-spanning questions, they will have to wait for my break. I'm going to take a break after the L's, and then we'll break again at the end. I don't think I'm going to play a song today, so we can have a nice long chat at the end if people still have questions. So I'm going to start with this book, which I saw last week. So apparently there was some kind of online digital comic festival hosted by the Nib, I think. And so this book, Chihuahua Head, was one of those books. But the books were only available like on the Nib's website during the comic festival, and then they went away. And so this is a month later that I'm catching up. So all of them were gone. And so I reached out to all of the creators after last week's show, because pretty much every book that I said last week, ooh, that looks really cool, we're all part of that. And I reached out to them, and some of them were like, I'm still trying to figure out how to sell it, or thank you so much for reaching out. But this person, Tali Cheas, their website, the cart was broken, and they were like, oh my gosh, thank you for letting me know. I fixed the cart, and now you can buy this. Now, I will tell you, this was $10, and it was a pretty quick read for $10, but support indie artists. I think that there is this feeling that I just love X-Men, or I just love big label comic books. This, to me, Chihuahua Head, I love this. I could read comics like this all week, every week, constantly. It's about this girl whose grandfather dies, and she moves into his house, and he used to kind of be a little bit of a dog hoarder, but all the dogs have been adopted out. They're all gone. All that's left are the pictures, except for she finds this one little Chihuahua in the house that wants to play with her, that she's like, oh, it got left behind. And I'm going to kind of heavily spoil this because it's an indie book, and I want you to understand why I loved it, so maybe you will go and buy it too. And so she starts playing with the Chihuahua, and the Chihuahua runs out into the woods, and so she goes out into the woods, and you think it's going to get like really scary and creepy, but actually the thing that's so scary and creepy is she runs into other kids from the town that she feels too socially anxious to usually interact with. And so the story becomes the story of like, how do you interact with people when you feel like you are just too unspeakably weird to be in front of other people? And the message that, and so this is like the world that she sees, which I'm obsessed with this book. It reminds me of like Silver Age Doctor Strange, because it's doing that thing where there's layers of swirls and some of them, the colors are reversed out and negative. And so she's just saying this is the world that she sees when there's other people just trying to interact with her in a normal interaction. And she's like, can't focus. It's too much. It hurts. So without spoiling the whole story, I do want to give you the moral because it really, really sat deeply with me. And the moral is, don't give up. It's hard to hold your shape when there's so much inside of you. Thousands of little dogs running in every direction. And when you die, they're gone. And it's just you. And you're not sure why you sacrifice so much just to hide them. Wow. Chihuahua Head by Tally Chase. Go check it out. It's on her website, tallychase.com. Okay, so now we're going to continue. As we know, I no longer read 2000 AD. I do read the Green Lantern, though. And I have to say, I can't say that I was too excited about it this time. It's written by Al Ewing. Art, colors, and covers by Genoa Lindsay. Letters from Lucas Catoni. This is probably the flop of the Absolute line. And I think it's for a few reasons. First of all, and I think I've mentioned this before, the Marvel Ultimate line definitely has more built into the premise that some of the books can be wildly stylistically different. I don't think that the Absolute line has that as much built in. It's built in that the artists are all superstar artists, but they're all still kind of adjacent to things that we know to be DC House style. And I don't think Genoa Lindsay is. And this book, as I said this after issue 1, it just looks like a decent YA book from Boom. It doesn't have that like, holy crap, this is killing me. And also, I think the story is just pretty boring. It's this idea that like all of the Green Lanterns all live in a town together and are friends, all of the Earth Green Lanterns, which again is like lending to the way this just feels like a kind of bad YA adaptation of something, because it's like compressing the world instead of making it bigger. And then they make first contact with Abin-Sur, and it's kind of like a horror thing, and he's like, the light judges you, and then they blow up. And it's kind of just, it really, really feels like a kid, like a edgy YA adaptation of Green Lantern. I'm not getting Absolute Universe from it at all. So I don't know if it's just me, or I have seen other people say it's not their favorite, but I don't know if anybody else is getting that. James Abel said that guy isn't the Guy Gardner I know. Some interesting ideas, but I wish the story moved faster. Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't think very much happened. Like they were basically like took us through the next 10 seconds of Abin-Sur getting to Earth. And again, a thing I think that Marvel Ultimate does very, very well is they make sure each issue is a whole month of story, or at least the most interesting thing that happened this month. And I think that a way that DC Absolute is lagging behind is that it's just the same decompressed comics that you can get everywhere else. Okay, and here's some more. I just found this art very unimpressive. It just didn't, I mean, the paneling is good, but it didn't really do anything for me. So next is Absolute Superman, and this was the book that dropped out of my top 12 this week. Jason Aaron writing, Carmen D. Giandomenico on art, Ulysses Zarola on color, and Becca Carey on letters. And the reason it dropped out was this was a bottle issue, appropriately, for the Keeper of the Bottle Cities, Brainiac. And again, this just didn't feel very absolute to me. It was this new Brainiac origin for the Brainiac we have here, who it turns out he's the sole survivor of a bunch of other Brainiacs. And so now he's in Earth and he's like partially going crazy, but he partially wants to know who Superman is. How is that different from normal Brainiac? I don't understand the point. And I like that the series has done so many one-shot, all-in-one issues. I just was saying that that's a positive thing, that all these books should do more. But to spend a whole issue without glimpsing Superman a single time, and for that issue just to be this kind of very standard Brainiac story, not only a very standard Brainiac story, but a very standard Jason Aaron story that I feel like I've definitely read from Jason Aaron before, it just totally put me off this book. I was just like, what are we doing here? I thought this book was about hope. I thought this book was about, reconfiguring the excitement of meeting Superman for the first time, but this just was, I mean, it was beautiful. I love D. Giantomatico's art on this. I've never seen him draw like this before. I love Ulysses Ariola's colors. The letters from Becca Carey are fantastic, but story-wise, I just think I've seen this 100 times before. James Abel saying, help me, Brainiac, you're my only hope. I love this new Brainiac origin story. Also, Colorist seems to love using purple on every page, which, as we know, is pretty popular with me. I don't read Adventure Time from Oni Press because that cartoon's a little after my time, but before I got into Steven Universe, so I don't have my own personal affinity for it. I do have a read Adventure Man family tree. And if you remember, last month or 2 months ago now, I was pretty positive on this Matt Fraction, Terry Dodson, and Rachel Dodson jam with Clayton Cowles on letters, because I really thought that even though we were coming in the middle of the story, it did a great job of introducing all of the characters, and it was a huge cast. And I'll actually drag my credits PDF onto screen here, because you can see like all these bubbles are characters that they introduce at in the credits page, and they're all in this story. So I really liked the first issue for that reason. This issue to me made less sense for two reasons. One, it went in really deep on this one character from the imaginary world who's kind of like crossing over into the real world a little bit, but her story was not that interesting. So I felt like we really got like, she's a pilot, and we learn how she meets Adventure Man in the pulp novel world, and I was just like, this could have been a caption box. There was nothing intriguing, like there was no risk for the character, even though it's meant to be like, oh, Adventure Man almost died. I just felt like there's nothing new or like daring about it, and so I kind of just felt trapped in it. And then also the kid who they're supposedly trying to find and is in danger seems to be perfectly happy in the pulp universe world, and that didn't get explained at all. This is right on the borderline of a drop for me. Like I just don't, I don't know. I'm gonna give it one more issue because I like the concept and I like the world, and I think this is as good as I've seen Terry Dodson draw in a while, and I love Rachel Dodson's colors on it, but I just don't think the storytelling is very strong, and that makes me nervous about Matt Fraction's resurgence and him coming back to write Batman, because Matt Fraction sometimes for me has pacing issues. So yeah, I was not too excited about that particular issue. By the way, as I mentioned in my intro, this was my favorite week of comics of all of 2025, so it sounds like I'm being rough on some things at the beginning. You gotta just hang in there, because I promise that I was loving a lot of stuff after that. This is Grimm Fairy Tales Alice in Zombieland. So Grimm Fairy Tales is doing this thing right now where they're like heading towards an incursion. The universe is going to end. And as we've talked about previously in the show, they did this after their first 10 years. And this is the end of their second 10 years coming up. So it's kind of just like, it seems like that's their cadence. And actually, I think that's very wise to have a shared universe that kind of rolls over and invites new readers in every 10 years, even if you're not doing a hard reset of continuity. And as part of that, they're doing one-shots looking in on various characters and showing how they're dealing with their various ends of the world. I like the idea of this by Joe Bruscia, Dave Franchini, and Alec Worley on writing, with Alan Otero on art, Juan Manuel Rodriguez on colors, Taylor Esposito on letters, which is to take a look in the Alice in Wonderland world, which is where Zenescope began back in 2006, and to see how this timey-wimey stuff is influencing that. But two things. One, this art, although it is pretty cool and textured, is just not up to the typical Zenescope airbrushy level of polish. So while the art itself is not bad, it really took me out because it just felt like a book from a different publisher. It's not their normal art or color style. And the other thing is, it's been so long since we spent any meaningful time in Wonderland with these characters that I kind of did feel like, who is this for? Like, there's been a few miniseries with them, but they're so far in the periphery of Zenescope that I kind of was like, gosh, well, if I'm not having fun, is anybody gonna have fun? But it is fun to see that they're willing to break stuff. I mean, there are long-running characters who die in this issue, and I like that Zenescope is willing to take that risk and kind of shake things up, because, I mean, who's reading these books? Sometimes I feel like it's just me, but this particular one is not one that I would recommend. Now we come to, this is our first Marvel book of the poll, All New Venom, which is, of course, by Al Ewing, with art, which I love, by Carlos Gomez, colors from Frank D'Armata, and letters by Clayton Cowles. So I still am hesitant to really spoil the big spoiler of this, even though you've had a month and a half now to begin to absorb it. But this really is just all fallout from the reveal of who is in this new golden-tinged Venom suit that we've been introduced to in the series. And also, it's Al Ewing having a little bit of fun and winking at the fans as he punches down at the amazing Paul. Paul is definitely made out to be sort of a totally blasé, blithe, borderline moron in this, and I think that that's being deliberately done to delight fans who have really hated him. I think that this issue was okay. I think my feeling the whole way through the first arc of this is that it did not do a good enough job setting up the mystery, and it turns out that the way that it's revealed here is a lot of the mystery of who was in Venom and how it happened was actually contained in Venomore, which I read but didn't really like, so I didn't really linger on that. I think I was looking for the mystery to be more encoded in the first arc of this book, so it felt like a little bit of a bait and switch to be like, oh no, actually that all of that that you would have been wondering about happened back in Venomore. And I'm like, well, then why did we need a first arc of this book then? Like, if there were no clues, really. So, but I do really like Carlos Gomez's art. I like how shiny and bubbly it is, but then sometimes with the faces, especially at the bottom of this page, he goes very Art Adams. Not my favorite, but I like the dynamic range of that. So I'm mostly reading for this for the art. I just don't know if Al Ewing has anything left to say about Venom at this point. James Abel said, look, we finally have someone to blame for all this, and his name is Paul. Jamie C47 saying, I have to say I like the MJ Venom idea much better than the internet. Seems to. And Superdrop just chiming in saying, I started Age of Darkness today. The events are my least favorite books up until now. I don't know what Age of Darkness is. Okay, this one shot I had very complicated feelings about. So this is the Amadeus Cho 20th anniversary special, written entirely by Greg Pak, because Greg Pak introduced Amadeus Cho, and then he wrote him in his run of Incredible Hercules with Fred Van Lent, and then he wrote him as the totally awesome Hulk in All New, All Different Marvel, until finally Mark Waid started writing him in Champions. And this has 3 different stories and 3 different time periods. So the first story has art from Takeshi Miyazawa, who I absolutely love, color by Brian Valenza, and it's a story of Amadeus Cho right at the beginning of World War Hulk, and this was kind of a nothing story. It's really just here to orient you to this character and who the people in his world are, and at this point I was like, oh, this is a waste. Why did they make this comic? This is just an in-between street scene of them walking down the street. Then I got to the second story, and this is where I really fell in love. This story is called The Family Cho, also by Greg Pak. He wrote all of it, with art by Grixley and colors by Sebastian Chang. This is really about how Amadeus Cho, who's the 7th smartest, however much smartest person in the world, and he's the child of Korean-American immigrants, and he has a sister, and their parents died, spoilers, very early in his comic career. And it's about how he had so much pressure on him as the child of immigrants, and his sister had so much pressure, and they deal with it as different ways, and ultimately that has left him with a lot of bottled up frustration and anger, because he's always got to be the best, he's always got to be good, he's always got to be smart, he's always got to be moving forward, and he finally found a way to express that by being the Hulk. And I was like, wow. And of course, his story is somewhat similar to Greg Pak's story, and I just felt like it was really personal and really moving, even though it was a very brief story. And then there's this third story, Defense Mechanism in the Modern Day, that shows him continuing to contend with that idea that now that he's identified this anger that he has as a first-generation American, and he's expressing it as the Hulk, is expressing that anger as the Hulk the most healthy way to express that anger? Honestly, I can't recommend this issue to somebody who has no affection for Amadeus Cho whatsoever, but if you loved him in Incredible Hercules, if you loved him as the totally awesome Hulk, I think this issue was very, very worthwhile. And as an immigrant who is a parent of a child who I certainly have high hopes for, it really, really hit me in the feels. Okay, a lot of you are saying some very interesting things, but they are not about the comics I'm talking about right now, so we're gonna have to save them for when I get to the L's, but we will come back and talk about them. So now we come to The Amazing Spider-Man, which was my Marvel pick of the week, which was surprising to me, as you can hear by my voice cracking. So this is by Joe Kelly, art from Pepe Larraz, colors from Marte Gracia, who we don't love here, and Joe Caramagna on letters. I had a real deep-seated Spider-Man is back, baby feeling about this issue. It just flowed. It was just joyous. And I like that Joe Kelly didn't keep up with Spider-Man being stuck in this hallucination zone that he was stuck in issue 2. I think that would be very Christopher Priest to keep kind of cutting back and forth in time and keep disorienting the reader in the scenes. I think Joe Kelly made a very wise choice here of saying no, you get that he's disoriented. Now I'm going to allow him to be disoriented in the narrative, but I'm going to let you have an oriented view of the narrative where we're not relying on him as an unreliable narrator to shake you up. I think that is a fantastic urge and instinct on him. I love the way he uses this villain, Itsy Bitsy, who is from his run on Spider-Man Deadpool. Just the art, the kinetic action. It's actually funny. There's quips. And Spider-Man feels like he's in danger, not of dying, but in danger of not having the responsibility he knows he needs to have, which is something very dangerous to him. And I love how this is playing with flashbacks to Spider-Man's youth in this very kind of like Goonies, or not Goonies, who's the one with Stand By Me, with all the kids and they find the dead body. It's from his, it's called Stand By Me. The brain, it's smart. It feels like that, but which I don't think we ever have thought about a young Peter Parker that way before, as this kind of like rebel kid who did have fights with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And so like that to me is very like exciting. Is it real? Is he just hallucinating this? Did he have a bad kid phase? Is this all a setup? Is it an implanted memory? I love that Joe Kelly, just by inserting that into the story, is playing with our expectation and existing knowledge of who Spider-Man is. And then, of course, I love a creepy villain who flirts with Spider-Man. I love when villains flirt with Spider-Man. It's just, it's one of my favorite tropes. And so to see this very creepy Spider Lady villain like rub her nose up against his mask and like almost lick him, I'm like, I love it. Make Spider-Man uncomfortable. I love when Spider-Man is uncomfortable. So this is a home run. I mean, this is actually shaping up to be the first fantastic run of Amazing Spider-Man for me, in a long time. Stoops is loving the new ASM. James Abel says this run is getting better and better with each issue. Itsy Bitsy dialogue reminded me of Black Cat. I think her character needs some work. And we'll pick up this Logan Wayne one, even though it's about all new Venom, because it's still Spider-Man adjacent. I think they should just reveal that Paul is Mephisto, who's still trying to keep MJ and Peter apart. Oh, and any other company would end with them defeating Mephisto and finally reuniting, but this is Marvel. That's a big brain take. I just like Paul. I like Paul. I like Spider-Man being uncomfortable more than I like the Parker luck being unrelenting. So the fact that he's not a total screw up in here and he's hanging on by the skin of his teeth, by the edge of his fingernails, to not being a total screw up, but the world is conspiring against him, I like that better than a run where Peter's just a screw up all the time. That to me is less interesting. Okay, loved that comic. Highly recommended. I think this is a great place to jump on. There's no baggage. You don't need to know anything. It's by one of the best creative teams you can get in comics. I just highly rate it. I don't read Assassin's Apprentice #3, issue #5, although you've all educated me about it in the past, and that is a different thing than Assassin's Creed. I think it's funny that they come out in the same week, even because they're very different properties and they're very easily confused. I don't read this one either. I need a drink of water, I'm finding. Hold on. Okay. This is Astonishing Avengers, which is part of Marvel's lineup of digital first comic books on Marvel Unlimited. Are you reading them? Because I'm reading them every week. This is basically Steve Orlando bringing in a pet favorite character of his, which is Somnus. I forget if he co-created Somnus with Luciano Vecchio or if Vecchio just created him on his own. My memory is murky. But actually, it works as a pretty good primer to bring him in. And this is actually why I'm reading this Avengers book, which is that I really want to see these characters that would never get airtime in the main Avengers series interact with Avengers. I wish we could support like a full-time print book that has that theme, but I do think it's fine to have that theme in a digital comic. So we see this, self-professed king of dreams, wink wink, Marvel Sandman, interacting with Hercules and kind of going through the astral plane into the dreamscape, or through the dreamscape to the astral plane. I've really come around on how Francesco Argentiancono is drawing this as colored by Carlos Lopez. I now like that it's kind of cartoony and webcomic-y, because I think I finally have come to accept that that's just the vibe of this run. I do think it moves a little bit slowly, but you know what? If you've got 25 weekly issues that are about 6 to 10 pages worth of panels each, so it's about a 6-issue arc. So if I feel like it's moving slowly, that's because each one of these issues is only like 1/4 of a print issue. I actually found myself pretty delighted by this. But if we're talking about delighted, y'all, we got to talk about Astonishing X-Men Infinity comic by Tim Seeley, with art from Eduardo Arduino, colors from KJ Diaz, and VC's Clayton Cowles doing the lettering. Because y'all, this is where it's at. This is one of the best X-Men comics I've read in the past year. Tim Seeley should be writing the flagship X-Men books. Tim Seeley's so good. Why do we have him on this peripheral shit? This is incredible because Generation X is slowly coming back together. So now we've got Banshee, we've got Hux, we've got Skin. Here on this issue, they've run into Mondo. So that's really exciting for me as a Generation X fan. But also, it's just funny. Like, it doesn't feel like a throwaway book that's just happening to like put a book out online for people to read. the Generation X little gang goes to basically like an influencer con in Las Vegas because there's this mutant influencer. I forget it. She's in danger. She's been murdered. But then there's this new kind of like flat scan movement of trying to like, kill mutants. And they think that they're infiltrating these influencers and using the influencers to spread the word. It's like a good plot. It feels modern without feeling like eye-rollingly wink wink. This is for the kids who watch the TikToks modern. And it's just got good punchlines and the art, which to me is what these Infinite Scroll comics should do. We should be using them to get good punchlines in the art. And I like Eduardo Eduino. I don't know if he would be the right artist on like a print comic that was mainstream and needed to attract buyers every month. But to me, to have him on a comic like this that's just very funny and an online comic, he does good expressions. He sells the comedy. It's really, really working for me. And I'm really, really enjoying it. Next, we come to Batgirl. Now, you have heard me talk some shit on this Tate Bromball Batgirl run, and I did not have high hopes for this because Takeshi Miyazawa is off of this book. Now it's got Isaac Goodhart on art with Mike Spicer still on colors and Tom Napolitano still on letters, but I was like, well, it doesn't even have the artist that I love. It's not going to be... No. I frigging loved this issue. Now, let's try to dissect why that happened. First of all, I don't know if I've ever read a comic by Isaac Goodhart before. Incredible. Loved it. His art was so good, so expressive, so clean, such great panel layouts. I could track the action. Every single time there was action that happened, it was easy and obvious for me to watch. Loved it. B, it feels like Tate Bromball all along has been waiting to write Lady Shiva's origin, and that the first issues of this, how many issues? The first 6 issues of this book were just there to set up us getting to Lady Shiva's origin. I don't think he wanted to write Batgirl. Batgirl's not in this issue, and usually I would complain when the title character is not in the issue, but he's been doing such a bad job of writing Batgirl every month, who's been being written so much better in Birds of Prey, and he's doing a great job of writing Lady Shiva here. So I was totally into this Lady Shiva origin story. I don't think you have to read any of the previous issues. I think this makes sense all on its own, and clearly it's going to continue. This is just the beginning of our origin story, and I was glued to it. I loved it. James Abel saying, why do we need the origin of Shiva? This better play a big role in the series later on. I didn't care for it. James, this is why we go to the couples counselor. You understand that, right? Cruel Angel is saying, Batgirl just in time for Mother's Day, but are they really doing a whole storyline on Shiva and not Cash? Just one arc into a brand new series, and now we lose the star of our show. So it feels like you two are having the reaction I would usually have to a comic, but since I think this comic was a piece of slightly hot garbage, it wasn't even hot garbage, it was like lukewarm garbage, to me I'm like, yes, no more Batgirl. And I love Cass's Batgirl, but Birds of Prey is the Cass Batgirl book. How are you going to go up against Kelly Thompson with your Batgirl book? You are destined to lose, and they put them in the same release week. So for me, I'm like, thank Jesus we're not looking at Batgirl anymore, because I don't want this Batgirl book to focus on Batgirl at all. But that might just be me feeling that way. Yeah, I absolutely love this issue. This art. I love this kick of this guy and like the force of the kick exploding out of the other side of his body. Just such good artwork in this issue for me, because now we come to Birds of Prey, which to me is the actual Batgirl book, because Kelly Thompson has such a facility with writing Batgirl. This, of course, is art by Sami Basri, and colors by Adriano Lucas, and letters by Clayton Cowles. This is the second issue of this new arc of them on the run, and I'm so tense. I love it so much. We ended last issue with like really concerned. Of course, Big Barda didn't die because they're not going to kill Big Barda, but just like really concerned for her safety and what happened for her and her well-being. And even though she is unconscious in this issue and has no agency, she's still a character participating in the issue, which I think is just so clever on Kelly Thompson's part, and such a great use of Barda's character, that even as an immovable presence that's just lying supine on the ground, that she takes up space in the narrative. But also, I just continue to love the way that Adriano Lucas is settling into coloring this and giving us a little bit of the color look and vibe that it had at the beginning. And there are a lot of intercut fights in this. And the thing I like the most about this is this book was less about the Birds of Prey and more about establishing who the villains are for this arc and like making them seem dangerous, but also a little bit unstable and quirky. So each of the Birds of Prey is fighting each of the different villains of this arc, and we're seeing how all the villains get together. And I'm not always a fan of a comic that's like, let's establish the villains and ignore the main characters. But I think Kelly Thompson has done such a good job for over 20 issues of establishing the main characters here, and I think that we didn't just forget the main characters. We learned about the villains by seeing the main characters fight them, and it just really, really worked for me. As opposed to Black Canary, Best of the Best, which is by Tom King, so that's nice. Now we come to my Image pick of the week, Blood and Thunder. So I want to just give the introduction to this before I set the timer. In the back matter, Robert Kirkman explains that he had this idea like 10 or 20 years ago when he was in the thick of Invincible and Walking Dead, and he had talked to this writer Benito Cereno about writing it, and Benito Cereno did a concept for it, and it kind of just sat on a shelf. And recently they had this kind of spark of idea and talked about it again, and it kind of got reborn, and apparently they've been working on it behind the scenes for quite some time. So this is a new regular Skybound Entertainment title. It's going to come out monthly. It is not written by Robert Kirkman. It's just from this original Robert Kirkman story idea. It's written by Benito Cereno with art from E.J. Su. Now we're going to set the timer. This reminded me, both in the solicit and in the execution, of a book that I love called Fair Lady from Image that got cut off way, way too soon. You probably haven't read that, so I'll tell you about this book. It's very Fifth Element. It's about this version of Earth that's in the future. There's plenty of aliens there, and it does this thing that I love as a story concept, and I've used in my own fiction at points, about a layered world that has layers of existence and then layers of caste system kind of at each layer, kind of like in Star Wars, where they have the flying car fight is at the beginning of episode 2 or episode 3, where it's like the lower you go in the strata of the world, the seedier you get. And there's this great sequence at the beginning to introduce the world that, like, weather's great at the top layer, and the second layer there might be a little bit of rain while they wash the streets, and at the bottom layer it's a full-on shitstorm. And that's just the world building of this. But the other thing that I love about it is just I love this character. So she's a half human being bounty hunter that has a talking gun, and the gun is kind of an outdated model, but she feels attached to it because it's her father's gun. And so she does bounty hunting, and she's willing to go down to the bottom level to chase down things for the cops that don't want to go lurking on the bottom level. And by doing that, she uncovers something that's maybe even bigger than a bounty that she would ever normally want to get into. E.J. Su's art here, colored by Miss Sasek, is incredible. Every page had me stopping to stare. I love her cloud of blood red hair around her. That's why the book is called Blood and Thunder. Russ Wooten's letters are, I didn't actually recognize it as Russ Wooten at first because it didn't strike me as the lettering choices he often makes, but I really, really liked it. I like the way he did the tails and the balloons, and he kept them farther away from the art, and he kind of just led them into the art. I just think it was very, very readable, and it had like a beautiful cartooning aspect to it where each character was just so well designed, so interesting. I wish I had included more of this chase sequence because it was so good, so fun to follow. Like, I just love how it ended. I found that I was just taking captures of like page after page after page of it. I could not endorse this book more. I know there's an issue 2, I think, already out this week because we're a month behind. I can't wait to read it. This really could be one of my new favorite books if it keeps up the quality. Now, since they first wrote this issue 1 like 15 years ago, even though they've changed it now with this new take on the concept, everybody's first album is great. Everybody's first issue is good. This has been worked over 100 times. So I'm really interested to see if the quality keeps up over the course of the first arc. Now we come to Blood Squad 7, which is Joe Casey's riff on Youngblood, even though now Youngblood rights, I think, are back with Rob Liefeld, so he could actually do Youngblood, but he's still doing Blood Squad 7. He's still riffing with Paul Fry on art, Francesco Segala on colors, and with an assist from Agnese Posa, and Russ Wooten, again, on letters. My complaint about this book is that it has not been kinetic. If you go back and read Image hero comics from the 1990s, they're kinetic, there's a lot of punching, there's action almost to the detriment of having any plot at all. And this has been really in the opposite direction, where it's been all plot, and the plot is barely plot, it's people just standing around. Well, this issue, we finally got to action. We got to see the Blood Squad 7 in action against their primary villains. I think they're called like the Gang of Four or something like that. But it worked and didn't work. It worked because it was really fun to see all these characters in action, to realize like they're not a very good team. They have zero teamwork with each other. They don't know how to do this well, and they're going to have to train to get back to the glory days that this team under this name had back in the 90s. But at the same time, we've seen so little of them in action that I found myself confused at points to be like, what is actually happening here? Who has what power? But the thing I liked about it is it was a very rough, very brutal fight against these enemies, and it didn't have that ping pong quality where like somebody was down and somebody was up and somebody was down and somebody was up. People did get hurt and fall off panel and then come back, but it didn't feel like I was being told by the narrative like this person's down for the count, only for them to pop back in, because that always pisses me off. Like, I like to see a fight where I understand the parameters and nothing feels like a Deus Ex Machina that comes in at the end to land the knockout blow. It was a very well-paced fight. I want to be rooting for this book because I love this Image 90s nonsense. I cannot imagine it selling very many copies because it's in a very similar trope to Local Man, which did not even make it to 15 issues, but I will keep reading it. They have secured another issue of reading from me here. I don't know that I could recommend it unless you were the biggest Youngblood fan on the planet, which actually really could be me. So I don't read Borderlands, Moxie's Mysterious Memento, although I do love pink on a cover. I don't read Captain Planet and the Planeteers, although I do have some nostalgia for this, but I don't really enjoy David Pepose. Okay, real talk. I just told you I was going to start reading KeenSpot comics, and I looked for this online, and I didn't find it, and I looked on their web, to buy, and I looked on their website, and I didn't see it to buy, and I was like, okay, they don't just do digital. Then, later this morning, I was on their website to just get the covers for this stream, and I realized the way they do digital, it's not a separate listing, it's in the drop-down for the print issue for cover A, cover B, cover C, the final option is digital. So I think, finally, my big brain has finally realized how to read KeenSpot comics. Now, this particular one has a very, very low rating on League of Comic Geeks, which has not stopped me in the past, and it may not stop me in the future. And I really think this cover is good. So the day that I'm going to read a KeenSpot comic is coming very, very soon. There's another one we're going to get to that is for sale digital, so perhaps I will catch up on them. Okay, I don't read The Creeping Below from Boom, written by Azzarello. Azzarello and I just generally don't vibe. I did, however, read Deadpool. And if you remember, I was a little bit soft on Deadpool by Cody Ziegler last time around. And the reason was that I was feeling like with so many quippy, funny characters in the mix, Deadpool, Ellie, Princess, and Taskmaster, and then also adding Solemn in the mix, Cody Ziegler was just turning into everybody saying quippy lines in the same Greek chorus voice of quippy lines. And that was the problem that I had at the beginning of this book, that it was just Deadpool and Princess quipping back and forth to each other in like one voice. Like I just felt it was like the same quips coming from the same character, and it didn't feel differentiated. So I was scared now that we've got these cast members who we can see adorning the top of this page and the top panel all together again, because it didn't really feel like it was differentiated. However, this issue works so much better for me. Partially because Roger Antonio's art is just really good, especially colored by Guru FX. Joe Sabino, of course, as always, doing great letters. But the thing that worked for me is Ziegler structures action so well, and he knows how to punctuate action well with the jokes. And I think Roger Antonio draws action in a way that is so easy to follow that this put the focus on Deadpool and the focus on the action. And so the jokes felt more broken up, and it felt like it wasn't just jokes. It felt like it was jokes related to motivation in the plot. So it really, really worked for me, and I really enjoyed it. I have my heater turned up a little too fiercely in this room, so I just need to turn down the heater a little bit, because it was frigid when I came in here this morning. It has been under 10 degrees Celsius in the house this week, because we're just into that season. So I've been having to put the heater in before I start streaming. It was just turned up a little too high. I was starting to roast, making me flashback to summer. Yeah, just great art. I don't know who even to compare him to. I mean, I guess Pepe Larraz, which is really just Marvel house style at this point, but he just does. I just love the likenesses. I love the way he gets. Look at how much expression is on the faces of Ellie, of Princess, and of Taskmaster. Not three characters that are easy to draw expressiveness on. So I really like it. I don't read Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe one last time because it is alternate universe, although God bless them for doing more of it. This was the other KeenSpot book that looked interesting to me. Don't Run with Scissors, which I think I am going to pick up digital and check out, because I noticed that it's actually for sale on their website. So now we come to what I thought was going to be my Marvel pick of the week. Fantastic Four Fanfare, bringing back the Fanfare brand for anthology books. So this had 3 different stories. The first story by Mark Waid and Ramon Rosales with colors from Niraj Menon. I mean, it's just a joke. It's literally like a one-idea joke about Human Torch pranking the Thing that is the story. Now, I will say, Ramon Rosales' art in this, and the colors, especially from Niraj Menon, that's what to watch. Just the level of shading and rendering on the faces, on the hands, on the scenery. I mean, I just found myself getting lost in the art here, which is great because that's all there really was to get lost in. It was just like a one-note joke. Then the second one, which was written and drawn by Alan Davis with colors from Matt Hollingsworth. By the way, all the letters here by Joe Carmaga. This one gave me some feelings because we all know Alan Davis is actually my favorite comic artist probably of all time. And to see him here inking himself, which he doesn't often do, it really looked a lot, in my opinion, like Neil Adams. And, you know, it really made me realize how long I've been loving Alan Davis comic books, and that who knows how long we're going to have Alan Davis still making comic books. So it actually made me very, very emotional. I don't think it's the best Alan Davis art of all time. It's very loose. I think he's better when other people ink him, but it was actually just a really nice little family adventure for the Fantastic Four, and it gave me a lot of emotions just about Alan Davis himself. This third story I loved. I do think the art was a little bit weird by Sarah Pichelli. It was much looser than I'm used to for her. Colored by Federico Blee, so of course it looks very blue. Although he does the excuse of the TV light at the top there. But what's really the main message here is that it is written by Andrew Wheeler, and I've loved Andrew Wheeler on a lot of indie books. I've read some very small press, very obscure indie books from him. He's very funny. I think he has the potential to be like another, I'm not going to say Chip Zdarsky, but like Ryan North, like somebody who just comes into smaller books and just delivers the jokes. And he does really good kind of like relationship jokes without it just feeling like it's all been done before. So this last story is about Johnny Storm being on kind of like a Love Island type of reality show, but he realizes it's actually adjacent to Monster Island and Mole Man is there. And it's just laugh out loud funny. It's so funny. And I just really loved it. So I did enjoy this issue a lot. It just didn't, as an anthology stories, it's hard for it to have the punch of one main continuity story, but I enjoyed all three stories and I really enjoyed the writing. And Lance McNair saying he was just thinking that Alan Davis art looked like Neil Adams, and maybe he was doing like a tribute. I don't know, but it just really struck me as different than Alan Davis being inked by somebody. Okay, so let's continue. I dropped Far Down Below by Chris Condon. After the first issue just didn't go anywhere. Like, it just didn't take me anywhere, and I didn't get excited. I am going to catch up on Rob Guillory's Farmhand. So I used to read this. This started coming out in 2018. I read the first year of it. And then I think I got a job and I was reading less comics as I was starting the job because I was so focused on it. And then this went on hiatus and it only came back for one more arc in 2022. And I thought he had just abandoned it, but no, it's back now with issue 21 for the last arc. It's this very cool world about this family that I think they like inherit the father's old farm, but also some of the technology they invented on the farm has spun off into this big, like, genetically modified plant company that is doing plant-based organ transplants for people. But then we find out that the plant-based technology is like infected in some way, so it's a little bit of a zombie story. So it's cool because it's like a human family story, and then it's also like a mad science story, and it's also a story about community, and it's also a zombie story, and it's really fun. So I'm actually really looking forward to binging that arc that I missed to get up to this. I tried to be careful about what I caught up for today because I'm so behind. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to get to catch up on this in a month anyway, there's no hurry to catch up on it today. I didn't read Free Planet. Great cover. I don't fuck with Aubrey Scissorson. I tried to find Frost by Bad Bug. They do have digital comics on their website, but they were not selling this one yet. It's a lot of boob comics. But this one doesn't look like, I mean, maybe there's boobs inside, but you'd think they would put the boobs on the cover to tell you there's going to be boobs, but it wasn't for sale on their website yet. So I'll keep an eye because I thought it sounded really cool. And I just really thought, there's something about this, like, is it a frost giant or is it like vampires? And he's cut their heads in half and he's got this like, this icicle sword, but he's got a golden gun. And it just, something about this character is very evocative and like really is interesting to me. I see you, by the way, all making such interesting comments. Comics, drink. And we will talk about them when I get past the letter L. Okay, I don't read Galaxy of Madness by Magdalene Visaggio and Michael Oeming, although, as I've mentioned in the past, if you like the idea of hard sci-fi, but with this very cartoony look by Oeming, you will love it. That is absolutely what it is, and I love to say that because just because comics are not for me, do not mean they're not good, and I think a lot of people would like this comic book. I don't read Gotcha Man, although, again, just another wonderful cover for this series. I do, however, read G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. And this is, Real American Hero means it is the same continuity that has been happening from 1982, although you could have picked it up in 2023 with issue 300. This book is just such a page turner. I just love it month in and month out. And I know I've said this before, they have the right collaborators with Larry Hama who can like tell the big stories that Hama wants to tell. Now, I will say last issue, 315, I felt was a little bit too casual. It was a little bit too moving the pieces around. We spent several pages of 995, which I've spent a lot of my life on. This issue paid it off because it feels like all of the plots are kind of starting to crest again in exciting ways. There's this Dr. Mindbender plot where he thinks he can ally himself with AI because he's like, I'm Dr. Mindbender, I'm smarter. And it's like, no, the AI is going to get you. Get you. Then we have this amazing beat with Baroness, who's like recuperating from almost dying, being with Destro and trying to make like hard choices, but she's like vicious as she's always been. Paul Pelletier, who actually reminds me a lot of Alan Davis, drew the ever-living hell out of this, colored by Francesco Segala with flats by Sabrina Del Grosso. And Oh, that's it. But then there were other plots too. There was a great plot with the Ninja Squad, which is like Snake Eyes, Scarlet, and Jinx, who are all my favorite G.I. Joes, are going to go undercover. Even though it kind of feels a little ping-pongy because they're going undercover in a place where they literally just were 2 issues ago. But I really like the storyline and I'm totally, totally into it. This book, I just get so much joy from this. It's just such a page turner. It's so toyetic. And I love that Larry Hama has an art team here. And by the way, the letter is Pat Brousseau, who is good enough to keep up with him taking out so many toys out of the toy box. There had to have been at least 20 named Joes, Cobra, and Vipers in this issue, and I just think it really, really kept up, and it was really, really great. Novarg was saying, since last week, I made me want to find that silent issue of Duke. Yeah, that silent issue of Duke, the silent issues all worked regardless as if you've been keeping up in the continuity or not, and Duke was absolutely the best one. Jamie C47 saying, I've never read any G.I. Joe in my life, but we'll be picking up the Energon Universe Deluxe later this month. Excited to read it. I will, remember, this is a different continuity than the Energon Universe one. I think the Energon Universe one is peak Joshua Williamson in that it's all very fizzy and fun, but sometimes it feels like you've read 5 issues and nothing substantial happened, especially in that first deluxe. The art is great. I actually like the Cobra Commander series, but I just need you to know going in that even though I recommend it, it is very decompressed and it flies by. It's very Brian Bendis. Joshua Williamson is Brian Bendis version 2025. So as long as you understand that going in, I think you will enjoy it. The art was great. It was a very fun story. But, and I like both sides of G.I. Joe. I think I'm getting a little bit more enjoyment from the Real American Hero side of it right now. And I see some interesting questions there, which we'll get to when we get to the L's. I wound up dropping Godzilla Heist after the last issue. I just wasn't thrilling to me. It was not enough heist. I think the first issue was so Ocean's 11, and then last issue was much more just Godzilla or whatever, and I was much more interested in the Ocean's 11 trope playing out in the Godzilla world than just playing out a Godzilla trope with people who are trying to steal something. Good evening. I just have to say hello to my friend Elan Reese. I didn't read this. I mean, not clearly, but so this is called Grixley. It's numbered number 69, but it's actually issue number 70. I guess he just wanted to use the number 69 a second time. And it's just like this indie, like, comic that I don't even know what it is. Like, I guess a parody book, but I just was so struck by this, like, beefy square version of Wolverine and this, like, creepy fingered Sabretooth hovering behind him that I just needed to share this image with you so it would be in your brain as much as it's in my brain. Okay, let's continue to Grommet. So I have issue 1 here on the screen, even though issue 7 was the issue out this week, because, you know, I'm not putting the timer on for this. You know, I've been through a real journey on Rick Remender where I just thought he was too cynical. And then I feel like I got older and he got older and we both changed a little bit. And I feel like he's just so energized by having his own imprint, Giant Generator now. And so this book that a year ago when it started coming out, I totally was not on my radar. I did not care. This is Rick Remender doing semi-autobiographical comics, writing about skate punks in the mid-1980s. So it's set very much in that same time period of the original series, the original season of Stranger Things. And it's about this SoCal skateboard punk community that a kid moves to Southern California and like enters into for the first time. At the time, I was like, I don't want to read Rick Remender doing that. Then after kind of re-falling in love with Rick Remender over the past 6 or 8 months, I was like, I really want to read this. And I didn't want to let the last issue go by without having at least read the first issue. So I read this first issue. It's actually co-written by Remender with Brian Posen, who is Jerry Duggan's co-writer on that run of Deadpool 2013 that we all love. And so I read it. It's got art from Brett Parson and letters by Moreno Denisio. I loved this. It made me feel like Stranger Things made me feel the first time I watched it. It made me feel like The Goonies makes me feel. It just took me to a place, and even though it was kind of toxic masculinity, it was toxic masculinity that I remember from the 80s. I'm younger than these characters, but I was there. I remember this. And it just took me back to that zone. It's like The Breakfast Club, but kids that were like 3 or 4 years younger than that, and that they were very much the outsiders. Even the most outsidery kid in Breakfast Club would have been too inside to be on the outside of the kids in this book. And so the art is incredible. The jokes really sold. It just took me back to the 80s, and I got really emotional reading it. I really loved it. Even though it was silly, it was not an emotional book. I mean, the gags are about farts. They're about how they think that this one guy's grandfather is is a sex offender. I mean, it's off color. It's very, very off color. And it's about how these kids just think each other is cool, are cool, and nobody else thinks they're cool. I loved it. So I'm going to definitely read the rest of it. If any of that sounds interesting to you, I highly, highly, highly endorse it. Eric Garza's here. Hi, Eric Garza. And you say, I love the first issue of Grommet's waiting for trade. I'm very excited to revisit. Same for me. I love the first issue. And since I don't read trades, I'm going to catch up on it. I mean, I literally ran out of time. I read this first issue as I was walking to hair and makeup, and I just loved it, and I wish I had had time to read all 7. So, Stoops, I just want to pull this up, even though it's not directly related to the comic we're reading. I realize I love this stream so much because of Krisis and all the comments everyone makes. Very cool and entertaining from you all, and I look forward to this every week. That is so kind, and I truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that that the pull of this stream is not just me talking nonstop for 3 hours. It is also more and more often the conversation that all of you are having. And so many of you are known to each other and are truly regulars. And I think that is part of the magic and why I'm so happy to be back here doing it on your Sunday afternoons, my Monday mornings. I really was missing it while I was doing all the poll stuff, and I'm happy to be back. And I have so much more that I want to do, but we got to catch up. Okay, let's keep going. This is, so this is the one that was out this week, which was the final issue, and I just am so excited to read more. Okay. I tried to find this, The Haunted Woman, because I love tarot cards, as we have established, but I just couldn't find it online digital, so I didn't get to read it. I don't read Hello Darkness, which is a horror anthology. I have read and kickstarted many issues of Lady Death, but at a point it just wasn't any fun anymore for me. It wasn't enough about Lady Death being the ruler of hell. It was only about boobs, and so I eventually gave up. But I do have a great love of Lady Death, and if I lived in America, would I buy every Lady Death comic book that's ever been published up until this relaunch Kickstarter universe? Absolutely I would, but they don't exist in New Zealand, really. And then I dropped the Herculoids. After the first 2 issues, I felt like, okay, we told the story of these people in this very savage land planet where people want to use their natural resources. I love Sanowski's writing. He's one of my favorite Vampirella writers, but there was no pull to bring me back. I was like, okay, I felt like I saw the pilot for a cartoon series that didn't explain to me what the characters would be doing after the pilot. So I did not keep reading that. I did read In Bloom. This one fell off a little bit for me, but I still highly recommend this book. And it's been such a while since I've talked about it, you might not even remember. So this is very kind of like flower zombie world, which isn't that what The Last of Us is? They're like fungus zombies or whatever. Well, in this world, they're flower zombies. And we've been following it for, it's got such a funny sequence where they're in this reality show where they're all seeing if any of them turn into the flower zombies, because everybody wants to be a flower zombie. Like, it's seen as a positive thing by most people in this world. And I just think the social commentary of them all waiting to turn into zombies is actually just, I just think it was such a clever trope. But the thing is, we're actually inside of this detective who's not a flower zombie, trying to break out of this kind of hell house where all these zombies are rampaging. And unfortunately, it goes into the thing that I was worried about with Amazing Spider-Man 2 last month, which is that it falls into his hallucination. And so even though And so we see some cool things happen in the art that kind of play with him hallucinating and what he thinks he sees, but we've totally lost the narrative. And I just think in what I think is a mini series that is a totally original IP, it's written by Michael Conrad with really cool art from John J. Pearson, lettered by Pep Rousseau. I just don't think in an issue 4 you have time to do this, like, we're going to go into the narrator's hallucination. We're going to follow an unreliable narrator. I think that's really dangerous to do this early in a series that has such a kinetic and pulse to it and so much kind of very satisfying violence. I just feel like it kind of turned it into a little bit of a shoot 'em up video game in a way that was not as appealing as the first 3 issues, which I really loved and which were on the verge of being in my top 12. It's Jeff Week is just a reprint of a bunch of digital first Jeff stuff. We're not into the brand new Jeff comic yet, so I've already read all this. It's adorable. I keep saying I'm going to catch up on Jim Henson's Labyrinth because I love Labyrinth. As we know, I probably could quote the entire thing because David Bowie does the music. I saw my baby, but I just haven't made the time to catch up on it yet. And every week I see it and go, oh, I want to start reading it from the first issue, and then I never do. I dropped JSA. It had 6 issues to take me somewhere. All it did was remind me that Jeff Lemire is terrible at team books, and I know you love hearing me scream about things, but I just value my time and sanity a little bit too much to keep reading it. However, I did read Jump Scare, and it is still embedded in my top 10. I cannot say enough about Danny Luckert's art here, who he's coloring himself. There's nothing that looks like this. There's nothing that looks this good anywhere in comics. The way he gets his characters to stand off from the backgrounds, the level of the detail in the backgrounds, the way he uses colors, and the way he just uses all of these like pinks and teals and then on bright red. Like he is not afraid of clashing and contrast, and he's not afraid to draw violence. And I like that he draws violence and there's lots of stuff getting cut up, but it never feels, I don't know how to say this, but it's like disgusting without feeling perverse. Like I like that it's bloody, but it's not making me sick to my stomach. It's just bloody in this really enjoyable horror movie way, which is what this series is. And I love that this issue, although it's almost all action, the action is so clear. And I just, you know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Jerome Opeña, colored by Dean White. It's got that quality to the figure work. And the thing that I loved is, even though this was an all-action issue, it was an all-action issue that really drilled home that, like, Jump Scare is one of the monsters. Like, she has her powers for the same reason all these monsters have their powers. She just happens to have the powers of a horror movie serial killer, which is actually really scary, but we see her being a hero. And so the book is kind of, Cullen Bunn is kind of playing with our expectations of like, yeah, she could easily be a bad guy. She is scary. And this whole issue kind of aligns her with the monster she's trying to kill in a really interesting way, as much as you can do that in an issue that's all action. By the way, letters by Jim Campbell. I could not recommend this any higher. Every page of this was like a holy crap, oh my god, I'm in love, this is amazing page. The only reason this wasn't a perfect 5 for me was that it just was so much action and it didn't have as much story development as the first two, but it did actually still have story development, just not as much. I am so addicted to this. I'm not the biggest horror movie fan. I don't think you have to be a horror movie fan to love this. I just think it's so good. If you haven't given it a chance yet and you're seeing this art and you're like, that does look pretty cool, the cover absolutely advertises what the art looks like inside. It is every bit as kinetic and fun and neon as it looks. It's truly one of my top 12 favorite comic books. It's the reason I'm here on the stream to talk to you about books. Okay, we're almost at L, and then I'm going to talk about all of your comments that are not just about what I'm talking about this very minute. So this Atom Project issue was my DC pick of the week. How did this happen? Well, here's why. This book all along, which is written by Ryan Parrott along with John Ridley, with art from Mike Perkins, colored by Adriano Lucas, with letters by Wes Abbott, all along it has been telling stories in two halves of time. It's been telling a flashback story of how did Captain Atom interact with all the power loss in Absolute Power, and then how did he come to be sort of a magnet for powers and the power gain that follows. And then it tells this present day story of like the army hunting for him and the other Atoms hunting for him. But what's really interesting is now we've gotten to the point where the flashback story is like almost past where we were at the beginning of the book. So now we're like filling in scenes that we weren't aware of already. And then the present day story is all the way up to the We Are Yesterday crossover in Justice League. And this is happening simultaneous to that. So I love that because I feel like because the flashback plot has like advanced all the way to what used to be the present, which is now our past, it's totally paid off. And the book makes so much sense. But now I want to go back and start rereading it from the beginning because I'm like, oh, there's so much information that we've gained that makes the present day plot so much interesting now that we're in the present of the present day, now that we're flashing back to the previous past day of the present day, days of future past. I just love it. And I just think that there's good conversations here. I love this conversation that Captain Atom has with Dr. Light. And it's just a good comic book. I feel like Ridley and Parrott have like found their way into making Captain Atom a really compelling hero, and I'm just addicted to the story. And I think it's doing a better story with Inferno, who are the bad guys that get revealed for the We Are Yesterday crossover. I think this is doing the story of them and how scary they are better than the actual We Are Yesterday. So I loved this. I just had such a good time. The art was so good. It was so compelling, and it was one of those great special kind of issues that made every issue that came before it even more interesting in my mind because it was executed so well. I love Kea by Wes Craig. I'm only on issue 12 because I refuse to rush it. I just read a few issues at a time when I'm feeling wrung out and I just need something I will enjoy. This could be the best comic book on the stands. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see when I get all the way up to issue 26, 27. This one kicks off a new arc. Highly recommended. At least the first 12 issues anyway are outstanding. This is another one of these, the space between books it's a booby book. And this one, at least, some of the books, I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. And then I look into it, I'm like, it's a booby book. This one, it has a character saying free the nip on her shirt on the cover. So we all know that it's a booby book. Now we come to my indie pick of the week, shocking me hugely, which was Lady Baltimore, The Daughters of Medusa, which is just one of these, like, Hellboy... Again, I don't know. I don't remember if Baltimore is in the Hellboy universe or not. Somewhere down here next to me I have one, but the clock is ticking, so we're just going to keep moving. So Lady Baltimore is the, I think, second wife of this paranormal investigator, Lord Baltimore, who's died. And so she gets called on in this slightly pre-World War II era to investigate paranormal issues in Europe, as Europe is on the brink of war. And there's this murder in Paris. And so she gets pulled to go to Paris and investigate this murder. This art by Bridget Connell, colored by Michelle Madsen, I am so into it. It's just so perfectly cartooned. It makes me feel like I'm inside of an episode of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. I love, and the characters that Mike Mignola's story and Christopher Golden writing here, the characters that he defines, I don't know who these people are. I think I've read one Lady Baltimore comic before. I immediately knew who they were. I immediately was rooting for them. They're all sketched so indelibly as characters. And then for this to like in this, Lady Baltimore is driving the car and having a conversation. These two side characters are kind of flirting with each other in the back seat. And then surreptitiously they hold hands just very, very gently between them. I was like shipping them immediately. And I have only met these characters like 3 pages before. That is good writing. And then this tips into a piece of mythology. I don't even know if it's real or not, about what's her name? Marie Antoinette. And so they go to Versailles, and I don't know if the mythology they're introducing about Marie Antoinette is real or not, but it was so cool. It led to a really great fight scene. I hope you hear the excitement in my voice. I love this. And I think what we found over the course of this year, which is like something I'm learning about myself, is that I actually really like World War II supernaturally stuff. And then I really have a taste for it. And so this is doing that perfectly. And I just think it was absolutely perfect. Letters, by the way, by Clem Robbins. It was so readable. Actually, the letters, the only thing I had a slight problem with, I do feel like the letters were like a little grainier aliased. Maybe they were just more for print than they were for digital. But I just absolutely love this. Oh, and I mean, we know it's about Medusa. The reveal of the Medusa on the page turn, but then the way that they continue to draw the expressiveness of the Medusa, just so enjoyable. Absolutely love this. I don't think you have to have any grounding in Mignola or Hellboy or anything. If you just want to read about a lady paranormal investigator in pre-World War II France and Medusas, you will love this book. Okay. And I think is this our last L? It might be. So this is Laura Kinney, Wolverine, issue number 6. Written by Erica Schultz, and of course, art by series artist Giada Belviso, colors from Rachel Rosenberg, letters by Corey Petit. I didn't love this. And the reason I'll say, but I understand it. Erica Schultz is doing these deliberate 2-issue arcs so that it keeps it fast. And I like that. But this is doing that thing where Laura Kinney is stuck in a dream world. She's stuck in a life that is not hers. Is it a psychic plane? Is it a hallucination? Is it arcade? We don't know. But it just stays there for the whole issue. And I like it. And it's great to see Gabby in this book. And I'm sure this is moving us in the direction of seeing more of Gabby. But to stay in this world and never come out of it and never get to the point that's like the twist. We never got to the twist. It was the whole issue of it in this world. And I just think that's a weird choice for a series that's trying to be really snappy and trying to keep the readers into it and trying to make sure every issue feels like you got a whole story and that it's interesting and that it took you somewhere and the stories are happening quickly. This just felt more like the beginning of a long arc to me, which I know it's not, because I've seen the solicits and I think the next issue just wraps this up. I just think should have gotten to the prestige. We should have gotten to the rug pull faster at the end of this issue, and because it didn't, it was not that satisfying to me. I don't read Let This One Be a Devil because if you remember, I read the first issue, and then when we got to issue 2, I couldn't even remember how I felt about the first issue. I was like, that is the sure sign of a book I don't need to keep reading. Look Out from AWA seemed interesting. It's actually a prose story that is just lightly illustrated. But it's not really what I'm looking for. I also thought it was interesting that it's Vertigo Entertainment. Surely DC must have a copyright on that or a trademark on that, right? But I guess not. And then, gosh, there's so many L's. So this is Los Monstros, which is like Los Angeles, but with monsters. This is by James Robinson. And I'm just in. For any like indie series by James Robinson that's a mini-series, I'm there. I'll read it. I'm totally into it. And then to see that this has Jesus Marino drawing it, colors by KJ Diaz, letters by Jim Campbell, I'm like, this is an all-star team. Let's check it out. I loved it. I loved it. And I don't always love like noir detective things. And that was my fear that this was giving me detective noir. But first of all, right off the bat, Jesus Marino's paneling and his storytelling and the colors here from KJ Diaz as this investigator is chasing down this kind of like merman who's got a bat in a cage, and the investigator is trying to rescue the bat because the bat is a kid. Clearly, it must be like a vampire kid who's a bat. Like, just way to just sell me a whole concept in one page. Like, everything I needed to know is encoded here. I love the paneling. I love the panels that are rolling off the side of the page. Like, we don't even get to see all of them. There's no more. It was just perfect. One page and I was totally hooked. Then just the subtle comedy of this investigator being a werewolf and him like rescuing monsters from other monsters just really, really worked for me. Even though detective noir is not my favorite concept, I love the mystery that unfurled. It really hooked me. I felt the world was really well detailed, and the art. I mean, even if you don't love James Robinson's writing, which I almost always do, the art here from Jesus Marino and KJ Diaz is just, every page had me gawking. Like, I was having this genuine feeling in my body of like, I'm so happy I picked this book. Like, I felt like, thank you for making this comic that I got a chance to read. And like, anytime I feel like that to me is the magic of comics. And I just loved it. And it got through a lot of scenes too. Like, it felt very compressed. There were so many scene setups. We learned so much about the character and his world. And I love that about James Robinson. He's always been good at that, going all the way back to the 90s. I mean, this is an author who over the course of 30 years has always been great about like packing in developments for his books and his characters. Just really, really loved it. And that brings us to the elves, so I get to very briefly breathe. And then I get to see all of your comments. By the way, Cruel Angel, I'll let you read this while I take a drink of water. Cruel Angel said, detective noir in a world of classic monsters, a werewolf PI hired to find a missing vampire while going up against the mummy mob boss and a crooked vampire cop. Great art, love it, yeah. As always, you said it way better than I said it. There are so many comments to catch up on, and I promised I would, so we're just going to speed run through these comments that were not directly about the books. And a lot of you are just talking to each other, which is great. I'm not judging. It's not a bad thing. I'm just saying I'm not going to my whole policy is I don't air out your laundry of talking to each other. I just air out the things of you talking to me. Max Appleman saying this Disney talk from the beginning of the show transported us to a whole new world. We love it. It's tales old of time. I can definitely feel the love tonight. Max's sense of humor is indelible. Pity Ma agreeing. Okay. So Novarg, this was Novarg, who is an indie comic artist on his own, and I did see him just sign off, so I'm sure you'll see this on replay. Loving Chihuahua Head, which I was showing off at the top of the show. Yeah, I truly am an indie comic lover. Like, I know that I say that my favorite artist is Greg Land, and it is, and Ellen Davis, but like, I love deeply weird indie books. I think you saw that with me loving that book Long Cold Winter so much, but I feel like so many of you know me through how much I love things like X-Men and Wonder Woman and DC and Image and Wildcats and all of these things that I sometimes get sensitive about recommending a really indie comic to you, because I feel like you're gonna read, or like Copra, which I love, because I just feel like you're gonna be like, that was weird, I'm not gonna trust your recommendations anymore. So I feel like I need to like always let you know that it's like a two-tiered world of recommendations. There's my mainstream recommendations, and then I love stuff like Chihuahua Head. I apparently convinced Lance McNair to also read Chihuahua Head, so that is pretty cool. Yeah, and talking, a theme running throughout the conversation amongst the viewers while I was starting to do comic books was this loss of attention span. And I think that kids these days have due to being on screen all the time. But here's the thing. I don't think it's just the kids these days. I think it's everybody these days. And the thing that happened to us all as a society in the past 10 to 15 years is the idea of infinite scroll. We never had anything like infinite scroll before, other than turning the pages of a book. Right? Like, you could turn the channels of a TV, but that's infinite, or that's finite. Infinite scroll on TikTok, on social media, kind of like is just constant drips of dopamine. And I know that some people are going to say, like, everybody's always said that. People probably said that when the printing press was invented, but it's not the same when you're dealing with somebody that's algorithmically being drip fed to you in an infinite scroll with content that is specifically designed to give you constant dopamine hits and make you feel briefly cheerful until you have the need to feel cheerful again. You cannot compare that to turning pages of a book. Like, I'm not trying to be a Luddite here who's hating on social media. A lot of my career has been in social media and new media. I'm just telling you, it's not a one-to-one, apples to apples comparison to say those things are the same. So to say that kids these days don't have an attention span. It's everybody these days. It's adults these days, which is part of why I don't use a phone. And I'm bad because I am on my laptop literally 18 hours a day, but I refuse to just have a little box that just scrolls information to me constantly. I really don't use a phone for that reason. Do I use my laptop just as bad? Possibly. But I just think, I think it's bad for brains. I think it's bad for brains, and it does something to your brain that makes you expect everything being entertaining in pieces that small. Which we could look back at things like music videos. There's plenty of examples in the history of technology and communications technology that we can make analogies to, but it's not the same as the content that's being crafted today. One of my great bucket list things in life that I don't know if I'll ever get to do. Maybe I should do it on the YouTube channel. Shock Pikachu face. I could do it on the YouTube channels. I want to teach a class about the history of communications technology and put these things into the context of their day. So when somebody fires back like TikTok's just the same as turning pages of a book, you could be like, well, actually, if we go back to the invention of the printing press and like actually talk about that in the context of the day. Next Imagine Not, wake me up for absolute brother power, the geek or Danny the street. Yeah, we'll see. I'm definitely interested to see how weird the absolute line goes. It seems like they realized they kind of struck gold with doing Absolute Martian Manhunter, which is by far the weirdest of all of them. And it's probably the one that's created like I feel like the most buzz. I don't know, like the original 3 created a lot of buzz, but the buzz around the first 2 issues of Martian Manhunter was truly wild. So I wonder if that's making DC like kind of scratch their chin and go, hold on, you mean to tell me if we go weirder, people will like it more? And I think that's actually a good message for them. Okay, this is how old I am that I have to hold my glasses up to my face. I'm just trying to enjoy some time without the glasses. I did see Super Chop later. You said that Age of Darkness is that current Zenoscope story. I'm like a goldfish. If it's not written down in front of me, I don't remember. So you're all the way up to present in Zenoscope. That makes you and I, Super Chop, the only 2 people I think on the planet Earth who are reading Zenoscope for the story. Not really. I'm sure there's more. I don't know where they are, but they exist somewhere, and they are our people. The events are your least favorite books until now. Yeah, I feel like they do events just because they can. Sometimes they're like, we're shared universe, we can do events. But actually the books are the best Zenoscope books tend to just be things that are like one-shotty in my experience. Peter DeLuca, random question. How's this Swamp... By the way, hello. I don't think I've said hello to you today. How is the Swamp Thing New 52 Omnibus? Is it an okay starting point? I think any New 52 book is ultimately a good starting point because they were all designed as good starting points, with the possible exception of Superman, because it takes Superman in such a weird direction that is so thoroughly controverted by the time we get to Rebirth. It actually starts to be like turned back even during New 52. But other than Superman, I think you can start almost anything in Rebirth. Some of it's not great. Like I wouldn't tell somebody to start Teen Titans during Rebirth. But yeah, Swamp Thing, and actually it's a pretty acclaimed run because isn't that by Scott Snyder? I remember back in 2011, I did not like the first issue of Swamp Thing, and I wrote about it on Crushing Crisis, and Scott Snyder commented and said, you know what, thanks for reading. I really appreciate that you wrote about it anyway. Sorry it wasn't your favorite. And that, to me, probably kept me giving Scott Snyder a chance on books for like another decade after that, because I was like, wow, he like stopped by my blog and he wasn't like, how dare you not like my book, douchebag. He just was like, cool, I'm really happy you gave it a chance. And like that kept me reading his books for a long, long time, even though I don't usually like them. Novark saying, I find it sad that it seems like with Superman, writers keep harking back to the same tropes. I hope with the Absolute that we get some freshness, but with Unlimited, the first issue, more than half was spent on revisiting the same old landmarks we know. Don't spoil me, no spoilers for things I'm not caught up on, which I get, I guess. And then I don't know if that was the end of this thought or not. Yeah, well, I think DC's always... because DC is better at Elseworlds, and because they have so many Elseworlds, and they have things like Absolute DC, and they have things like Dark Knights of the DC, Vampires of the whatever, it means that their main characters tend to regress to mean a lot. It's just what they do. And I agree, part of what I liked about Superman as Absolute Superman is that I just was into the idea that it was going to be remixed and different. And so the more that Aaron suggests that it's very similar to the Superman we already know and love, it's kind of like the less interesting I find it. So I would, I guess, in some, completely agree with you. Yeah. So Lance McNair just really enjoying that people are enjoying Spider-Man. Novarg saying, I never thought of Peter as a screw-up. Always a person that wanted to do good, but life and people happen. Well, to me, Novarg, and I know you're not on the stream anymore, but you'll see this eventually. That, to me, is the problem with, I think, how people have been writing Peter for the past, like, half decade, is that they start to just write him as if screw-up is his character. Like, they stop making it about that his responsibility and his his drive to do good is so strong that like nobody can do that good all the time. And so you're going to drop some balls, and the balls might be in your personal life because you're trying to save the world or save New York, or at least save one person who's about to be hit by a car. That is Peter Parker. I think that's indisputably Peter Parker. But I think that modern writers get it confused with him just being this like asshole who's bad at life. And I think you very much see that in that Astonishing Spider-Man Infinite comic, Catching Strays, even though I didn't have an issue to read this week, where even though it's like in the current Peter Parker Spider-Man, it's totally left aside this concept that he's a good person trying to do good, and you just can't be good all the time, and that's why he screws up some things. And instead it just like leans into the idea of like maybe he's just a screw up. I don't know. I think you're totally right, and to me that makes a good Peter Parker comic book. Yeah. Writer, and then Logan Wayne adds, writers who think that Parker Luck is him being a loser who can't get his life together deeply misunderstand who the character is and what Parker Luck actually is. Yes, that is the whole thing that I've been trying to say, I feel like, for weeks now. Thank you for putting it so succinctly, Logan Wayne. Okay. Rods, then we were talking about Batgirl, people talking about Big Barda and how much they love Big Barda. People talking about Alan Davis, talking about G.I. Joe. So this actually moved along at a pretty good clip. Lance McNair saying, never got bit by the G.I. Joe bug, but I might read some comics of it eventually. Yeah, it's always so hard to decide if I or anyone should recommend to you to like read an IP that's so heavily rooted in being like a cartoon or a toy or something that you would have past experience with, because sometimes the magic just doesn't translate, and you have to have some affection for it. And that's how I feel about Power Rangers, because I of my era, but I just never liked Power Rangers. It just wasn't my thing. And so now people say the Power Rangers comic was so good, and I'll like go to read it. I'm like, but it's just Power Rangers. It's just the same Power Rangers. And I don't have nostalgia for it, so it's hard for me to like see that. So with G.I. Joe, I kind of have like nostalgia blinders on. I'm like, do I love it just because I have such an enduring love for G.I. Joe, or is it a good story on its own? And I guess where I come to on that is that with Real American Hero, it doesn't matter if it's the nostalgia or not. It's a 300-issue series with good continuity. That's attractive on its own, regardless of if you have nostalgia for the property or not. The fact that it can play with these toys that have been around so long, and it's an indie book that can do that, that is attractive. I do think the Joshua Williamson G.I. Joe stuff is very much playing this absolute universe game of like, here's the G.I. Joes you know, but a little bit different. And so that I have trouble recommending really strongly, because I don't know if it's made a case for itself being good all on its own without the nostalgia factor. So that's always the thing that I'm thinking about there. And Janie saying that he's been planning on reading the Hamas classic stuff one day. Unsure how I feel about the book now that I've mentioned it compared to Bendis. Well, I'm just comparing. I'm getting a little sneezy. Oh, I don't know if I want to sneeze or not. I actually, this is how old I am. I swear we're going to get back to your comment. I hurt myself so bad this weekend sneezing. I was in the kitchen. I was crouched down putting away dishes in a low cabinet. And I felt a sneeze, and I was like, oh, I don't want to sneeze on these clean dishes. So I like really braced my abs, but I was like all crouched like a little gargoyle. And when I held in the sneeze and my abs were braced so much, I like crumpled into my own solar plexus. And I don't know if I cracked a rib or if I just like bruised myself or like gave myself a hernia, but I am in constant pain from sneezing. That's how old I am now. Sneezing can take me out. So I didn't even actually get to do yoga this weekend because I was in so much pain from sneezing. Back to Brian Bendis. So I think the answer is I would rather not sneeze, but I'd rather not hold in a sneeze. So if the sneeze is going to happen, I'm just going to sneeze and it's going to be ugly. I just feel like Williamson writes at a similar pace to Bendis, where Bendis is writing, sometimes you're having fun when you're reading the issues, but then when you go back, you're like, what did happen in that arc? Which I often felt when he was writing Avengers or even Guardians of the Galaxy. Is very much how he writes team books, but it's how he writes every book. It's like fun while it's happening, but it almost feels like a lot of empty calories, and you look back and you're like, what happened there? It was fun because the toys were being moved around in fun ways and the art was good, but like, what was the story? And I think Williamson is similar in that way to Bendis. Okay. A lot of people saying hello and showing love to Elon Reese, which I love. Then we were talking about Grommet, so we're almost up to present. A lot of people having to go because it's either late for them in Europe or dinner time for them in the United States. Cruel Angel started my summer series of comic cuts by channeling Krisis. No more anthologies. I already cut the EC ones, and you were the one who tried to get me to read Hello Darkness, I think, a few weeks ago or months ago. Yeah, you know, I still want to give everything a chance, and I still don't want to judge books by their covers in a negative way. But I just think I want to bring you things that you're interested in hearing me talk about and that you're potentially interested in. And I'm interested in talking about things that are like stupendously bad just for the lulz and the content of it. But I'm not going to keep reading things that don't give me strong feelings just to read them. I think that's where I am now. Like you gotta invoke hatred, in which case I might stick around for an arc and just talk about how awful it is and how much I hate it. Or you've got to evoke love, and things that are in the low side of the middle, I'm just feeling a little bit more ready to cut at this point. Jarn asks, do you think there will ever be a writer change in Absolute? Well, it's really interesting because it's same for Ultimate in a way. They've hung the line so much on saying we've got these blockbuster writers that what happens when there's got to be a handoff? And I think it's going to be really interesting to like who's going to follow Jason Aaron on Superman, right? So I think it's really interesting. I think that behind the scenes, part of the way that Hickman curated Ultimate and the way that Scott Snyder curated Absolute is they really looked for people who were in it for the long haul and were at least pitching 2 years of a book. So I think, you know, things change. People get other deals. We've seen creators jump off of things because they get a better deal. Kelly Thompson jumped off of Powerpuff Girls because she got Absolute Wonder Woman. I mean, that's not confirmed, but I think from context clues, we know that that's what happened. Sorry, I'm just trying to make this not fall. So I think barring that, I think we're going to see people at least do a year or 2 years on it. And I think ultimately DC, even more so than Marvel, gets that that's the sell. Like, if they have the same creator on something for a year or two, in their mind, they're like, that's 4 books on the book market. That's an Absolute edition. That, like, DC's very good at thinking that way, much better than Marvel. And so I trust DC more than Marvel. Marvel will just switch somebody out to switch somebody out because Marvel doesn't think about the strength of their backlist as much as DC. I feel like even in their modern day editorial decisions, DC's also thinking, especially with these big writers, how can we turn this into backlist? I feel like Marvel is just approaching that point in the way that they're thinking about Jonathan Hickman, and they should be thinking about Jed MacKay that way too. Marvel has other writers that they should be already thinking about how that will play on backlist. Kevin Cork is here, who never gets to be here live, but here on a Sunday, I wanted to pop in and say hi. Hope everyone is having a great day, and so glad I got turned on to Jump Scare. Yeah, love Jump Scare. Happy that I am spreading the word, and now we're all the way to where I left off. You made it, Adrian Montanez. I made it. But hello to you. By the way, am I going to wait until the O's do inhale oxygen? Perhaps. Jeremy doesn't have anything to say and just wanted to be seen. You are seen. Where do I stand on Luke's arc? Oh, by the way, I somehow missed another comments drink. I missed one, but I saw it. Did I ever read a Star Wars novelization? No, but I did have an original copy at one point, which is not in New Zealand with me, unfortunately, of Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Dean Foster Wallace, which was like that very famous early continuity Star Wars book. It was like one of the first, I think, continuity, like extended canon Star Wars novelizations. But no, I didn't. I maybe read some of the Star Wars novels in the 90s. I remember Tower Books on South Street in Philly used to have like a big display of them. So I maybe have read a few, but I've never read any of the official novelizations of one of the Star Wars movies. Now getting to this one, where do I stand on Luke's arc in The Last Jedi? I loved it. It's tricky. I didn't like The Last Jedi for different reasons that everybody else didn't like it. People didn't like it because it was like too woke or whatever. I didn't think it was woke enough. I wanted to wake up even more. I was like, more purple hair Holdo, more Luke having PTSD, more, like I was like, more. And so then when Rise of Skywalker like regressed back to the boring parts of Star Wars, I was like, we're done here. So it's funny to talk about Last Jedi because I start out from it, I didn't like it, and people are like, yeah, me too. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't like it for a different reason than you. I didn't like it because I wanted to push further. So yeah, I loved everything about Luke's. I just felt like it moved people forward. I was just so frustrated. I just felt like there was even more it could have done. That was my frustration. Oh no, Super Job corrected me. I have not. Age of Darkness is the 2014 Zenoscope event. Oh, so you're like way back. You're not even into 2016 yet. Yeah, I only read like the first 20 issues of Zenoscope from 2006, and then I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many. I'm gonna just jump to 2016 because it's like happening now. Yeah. Okay. how often do I see the reading order mapping differ from epics to omnis? Well, Maverick Ghost, hello, by the way. Love Maverick. Love that trading card by Jim Lee from the original X-Men series in 1991, 92. I think it has to do with if the omnibus line is deliberately mapped from epics. So for some of the omnibus lines that were already in progress before epics happened and the epics had more to collect, they differ. So like I think we're going to see that a lot. I think if you look at like the Todd McFarlane era, David McElhaney era of Spider-Man, it differs from the epics because those omnis started to get collected first. I'm just kind of looking around some omnibuses to trigger my thoughts here. So I think that like any omnibus line that kind of existed before the epics is not going to try to marry the epics mapping, even if that's a modern line that has come out in the same period as the epics and is not like a Masterworks line. But I do think increasingly when they're mapping omnibuses that have been epicked already, it seems like Marvel is like, okay, well, let's look at the epic and then let's look if there's anything from other lines or other appearances that we can add in 1 or 2 issues here or there to kind of expand it a little bit. So I do think for omnibuses from like 2022 and forward, if they're material that was epicked, that was never masterworked, it does feel like generally omnibuses are like, the epics are good because honestly, epics are mapped really well. It's pretty rare that the epics have a true miss in them because unlike Masterworks, epics aren't afraid to double dip a little bit from another line. Masterworks, it was like verboten, like do not double dip. These are expensive books. They're meant to pack a maximum punch. You should not double dip an issue of X-Men that had Kazar in it, or of, you know, Daredevil that had Namor in it, because they can just buy that Masterworks line if they want. Epics are much more like, no, man, we want this to be the whole continuity of this character. So, yeah. Okay. Ultimate Power Pack, when? Gosh, that would be... I mean, the great thing about Ultimate is that it's not as dark, necessarily, as it's got such a similar premise to Absolute, and that some big bad guy took out the hope from the world, but it's not but in Ultimate, it's just the maker took out the inciting events. So the thing about Ultimate Power Pack is if that horse guy, Whitey, didn't come to them when they were the age that they were, when would they become Power Pack? That's what's interesting. Now I want to read Ultimate Power Pack. Okay. Yeah, you know, it makes me happy. I love Spider-Man. Like I'm spider-sexual. Like I want to enjoy Spider-Man books. That is my natural inclination. And when, just like with X-Men and just like with Wonder Woman, like I generally am rooting for the books. Everybody except for Hal Jordan, fuck him. So like I want to say good things about Spider-Man. I want to enjoy Amazing Spider-Man. I want to nerd out about Spider-Man. Like, and I want to feel that way about so many comic characters, but very specifically with Spider-Man. Like I do want to love it. So it makes me very happy when we get to discuss Spider-Man all day, maybe let someone look at my sneeze injury. I'm trying to give it a couple days to see if like a bruise develops or if the rib still feels tender. But when you crack a rib, you know, like if you crack a rib from coughing, which is a thing that can happen, like your rib is just cracked. You can't do anything about that. But I'm keeping an eye on it. It's, you know, I'm keeping in mind my whole resolve, repair, recover thing. And I'm just giving myself recovery. Like I think at some point I would have either A, just tried to work out the next day and hurt myself even more, or B, I would have been like, no, I can't work out for months. And which happened when I had that sprain earlier this year. And now I'm like, you know what? We're going to give it a couple days. We're going to do less abdominal stuff. We're just going to go for a walk. Maybe we'll go swimming. We're going to take it easy. I have to get to the pool this week. If you see this face next week on stream and this face hasn't been in a pool, we have problems. Okay. People are very, very concerned about my sneeze injury. Alan Dean Foster. Yeah, Dean Foster Wallace, somebody totally different. Alan Dean Foster is who I was talking about with Splinter of the Mind's Eye, since it is the first sequel to Star Wars. I remember finding it in this little used bookshop in Florida, and even at that time knew that was like something cool and interesting. Jarn laughing at me saying Last Jedi is not woken up and agreeing. Sorry, the sun is like... We're having, you know, New Zealand's sun is a more powerful sun than other suns. And as much as I'm enjoying the natural light on my face in here, it was starting to get blinding. But see, now it doesn't look as good. Okay. All right, folks. I think y'all are just having so much fun talking. Krisis, of course I'm still live. We're not even to hour 3 yet, Bunkmaster. Are you in Pittsburgh? I'm driving home with you. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. As a Masterworks collector, have I emailed Marvel? No, because I don't care. Maybe you didn't see my thing last week. I don't know. The Masterworks line should have been over already. I do think they should. I think it's offensive that they're not going to wrap up a couple of these books that need to be wrapped up, but I got bigger fish to fry. Like, okay, Crisis lore. I generally look at any kind of sign the petition movement with great skepticism, because I'm like, what number of people would have to sign this petition for anyone to care? Or is this just like a marketing stunt, either for the company that wants you to sign the petition or for the person organizing the petition? So I am very, very averse to lending my support to things, which maybe is just my, in general, wanting to always be in control and of the narrative at all times, rearing its head. And I know Marvel invited us to write into them, but I'm like, if you are at the point that it's not profitable and you're looking for us to write into you, come watch my friggin' YouTube show. Hire me. I'll like, let me look at your analytics. Let me map your books. Like, I don't want to like give away my protest movement for free. But more to the point, you know how on the Marvel poll, I say I only vote for the books I would really buy? And on the DC poll, that was going to be my moment of crisis day. See, I do need to write things down more. I was going to do my DC ballot picks for you today, since the reveal is tomorrow. Spoilers, it was all Sandman, Wildstorm, and Wonder Woman. Now, there you know. Maybe we'll talk about them at the end. But, or I'll do it next week. But, point being, I didn't want to do a top 60 for DC, because I would never buy 60 DC. I will never own 60 DC omnibuses. Even if they do all of Sandman, all of Wonder Woman, and all of Wildstorm, there will still be less than 60 omnibuses, so I will never own 60 DC omnibuses. So I'm not going to make a big stink like, oh yeah, I would love to have this Catwoman omnibus. I will never buy it. And so I think that's why I haven't written in for Masterworks, because like, looking at my shelf, there's only one more book that I need. I mean, there's one or two more books that I need. So I'm like, if you want to cancel the line, that's up to you, man. You know, let the people who are passionate, who are like really going to spend the money, make the argument, because Marvel was only ever going to get another $150 out of me. So like, yeah. Is spider sexual different than arachnosexual? Yes, because actual arachnids terrify me. Even though I did see arachnophobia twice in the movie theater. Spiders, this is just a funny conversation. Okay, we're up to present. Kind of like the recent Wheel of Time show petitions. When the cast started telling fans of the show to sign, I knew the show would be canceled. I actually love season 3, so it's a bummer. Yeah, no, you don't have to apologize. I am the king. I'm the king and queen of the goldfishes. I am the ruler. I'm the sovereign of the goldfishes. I don't remember shit ever. So you never have to apologize to me about not remembering something I said on my stream where I'm talking 100 words, probably 300 words a minute. Never apologize. I'm just saying, I just don't. Let's put it this way. If Marvel was saying they were thinking about canceling or going less on the Epic collections, I would write them an essay. I would have data. I would have impassioned pleas, because I buy that whole line and they stand to make a lot of money off of me. And I know there's a lot of people not only who are already buying the whole line that they're making a lot of money off of, but that who are easily fall into it. I see people fall into buying epics all the time. There just doesn't exist that for Masterworks. So I feel like it would be a lie for me to go that over the top. Also, much to Lance's point from the previous I think if you're already telling me the thing got canceled and you're like, so do the petition now, that's too late. And I wish that like networks and people and comics companies would realize this. The time to tell us to show our support is when the thing still exists. And I know that it doesn't always work like that. And sometimes Joni Mitchell said, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Sometimes you got to lose a thing to realize how much you wanted the thing. But it's so hard to put the gears of production back into motion that I respect it more when a company is like, support now if you want to see more. So like there's going to be a Valiant Kickstarter coming up from Alien Books that is collecting 90s Harbinger and Omnibus for the first time. And the message that they're saying even before the pre-launch of the campaign is, all of you people who want classic Valiant and more of classic Valiant, you better show up for this Kickstarter, because if this Kickstarter is profitable, we will do another one. And if this Kickstarter is not profitable, there won't be another one. And I just like, a vague disclaimer is nobody's friend. Start out with that disclaimer and tell us like, this needs to be profitable right now in order for this to continue. Don't like string us along and then make us beg for it later. That's something about that just really bothers me. Oh my God, we're only halfway done the comics, guys. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. And plus I always forget the first 30 minutes are me just yammering anyway. So when I see 2 hours, I'm like, it's going to be another 2 hours. It's not going to be another 2 hours. Okay. But let's share the screen. Why won't it share? Oh, we have to go back to the sharing. Okay. So I will remind you all that I will not see your comment. No, I do. That's a lie. I will see your comments, but I'm only going to put comments on screen if they have to do with the current book. So if you see a current book I'm talking about and you have something to say about it, say it, and I'll get it on screen. Otherwise, I will catch up one last time at the end to your more general comments, which is not to say don't make them as they occur to you. Make them as they occur to you. I'm probably not going to pause and talk to you about the books. Okay, Marvel Meow, it doesn't need a minute. So Marvel Meow it's just like 2 pages worth of images. Sometimes it's just a cat and the whole gag is like, it's a cat. Sometimes, and especially recently in this recent comeback of this Infinite comic, it's actually had a little bit more of a narrative to it. And this one I just found frigging hilarious. It's all by Now Fuji, by the way, doing the art, the letters, everything. Basically, Lara and Logan are being tailed by members of the Hand, and so they walk through a cat cafe and they hand the Hand cat food treats, and then they walk out while all the cats swarm them and want to eat the treats. Hilarious. I mean, it's like 2 minutes, 2 pages of content. It took me 41 seconds to read, but it was adorable. Now, you've heard me for weeks talk about this Marvel Unlimited Marvel Rivals comic. I don't know how much more I can scream about this book to you if you are not reading it already. And the thing is, you don't have to be reading Marvel Rivals about it to enjoy it. Paul Allor is basically just taking the little slices of continuity that are being referenced by Rivals, and he's turning them into a continuity-based story. And the thing that makes this so exciting is this is about Krakoa, and it's very much about the ethics of Krakoa. And as I went on and on about last week, it's just so much more interesting than anything we got at the end of Krakoa. I will say Iguara is doing his best to make use of the vertical scroll now, where we see like Squirrel Girl diving in and dropping a nut, and the nut exploding, and then Storm is going off panel, but also we see Storm moving towards us, so the camera is shifted, but the panels continue. That is good use of vertical scroll. I did get a little bit lost in the sauce at points, but I just think that for a book that's coming out for free on Marvel Unlimited, Paul Allor is taking these ideas and they're running with them so far and so fast. And I just makes me want to see Paul Allor write an X-Men book, which he did, or they did write an X-Men annual, I think in 2023 or 2024. But let's get them on an X-Men book and see what happens. But B, it just makes me really appreciate that, like, this Marvel Rival stuff is fun. They're picking cool, recent continuity. I feel like so often video games are mining continuity that's like ancient because they're trying to appeal to everybody that remembers it. And it's just so fun to me that this game is like mining stuff from Krakoa, which is only 5 years old. Adam Messenger asking if Ultron Magneto thing is addressed. It definitely has a lot of Ultron in this plot. I can't remember if it's really gone. It hasn't been much about Magneto, but it's a lot about Ultron. I feel like this arc is much more about gameplay than the first arc. I feel like they might have started working on the first arc before the gameplay was like really available, so they only had design documents to work from. And I feel like at this point, Paul Allor has like seen and played the game, and so now they're writing from that knowledge. But I don't know all the game lore, so I don't know if it's totally referencing the game lore. I have seen this book, Miscatonic High, scroll by me so many times. It's been around for years and years, and I've just never taken the time to look in it. That DB Miscatonic usually is a reference to some sort of eldritch horror or Lovecraftian type of horror thing. But if anybody's out there reading Miscatonic High, please pitch me on why I might like it. I don't read Juniba's Monkey Meat, the summer batch, because I definitely don't like it. All right, it's time to talk about The Moon is Following Us. Bunkmaster, close your ears. Turn on the radio while you're in the car. The Moon is Following Us, of course, is by Daniel Warren Johnson, trading art duties with Riley Rossmo and with Mike Spicer on colors and Sean Lee on letters. I hated this. I hated this so much, it was stupid. It didn't accomplish anything if you're in a dream world, and every character is a dream. It doesn't matter if they die, because they die again and again and again and again and again and again, so nothing matters. And in this book, nothing mattered once again for the 5th month in a row. And I find that this comic doesn't matter to me anymore. Fuck it so much, fuck this shit. I can't believe I'm still reading it 9 issues in, because it is garbage! 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 It's garbage. I fucking hated it. This made me regret every minute I've spent. And I know some people like it, and they're like, oh, it's the dream world, they have feelings. No, this is stupid. This whole book was stupid. I feel bamboozled for... Here's the thing. Letting go of my rant for one moment. If you're going to do a book in dream reality, something needs to be a kernel of sense-making and consequence. Sandman always understood that. The Dreaming always understood that. This book doesn't understand that. Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossmo are just having so much fun writing the same things, dying and coming back to life and being ripped in half, and then half of them is still there, that there's no consequence. And I get that there's a consequence about these parents loving their daughter and then maybe some kind of specter of abuse in the past of the father, but we've just been through the cycle of the same fight so many times in 9 issues that I find that I am just... I'm at like flames on the side of my face level with this book at this point. And I'm going to read issue 10 because I've read 9 issues to this point and I want to see if there's anything redeeming about it, but I will never catch me recommending this book, which is a shame because I love the art trade-off between Riley Rossmo and Daniel Warren Johnson. But this to me was like a 0.5 out of 5 comic. I could not have hated it more. I was incensed when I finished reading it. Okay, let's continue. To Mouse Guard. I know nothing about Mouse Guard. All I know is that people on Near Mint Condition recommended it to me when we were doing the what should be evergreen in libraries on the comic book shelf. That's all I know about it. I am so frigging addicted to this, and it's only got 1 more issue. It's 3 issues miniseries. It's by Gabriel Rodriguez on artwork, words, and colors. I love that they put the credits in that order. By David Peterson. It's about this one mouse who has this beautiful axe, and he's like, I'm gonna save the mouse kingdoms from the snakes. But he finds that with every snake that he kills, it just means that more snakes know where he isn't. And so they are eating more and more mice. And he's like, am I doomed? Am I making the world worse by trying to make it better? And the art is just so beautiful. It's so savage. It's so visceral. I'm like and the mouse, I love that even though the mouse is anthropomorphized and he's walking around, he's holding an axe, he looks like a mouse. Like he's a mouse and he's emoting, but it's like a real mouse. It's not like a cartoon mouse that looks like a person. It's a mouse. And I just think that I can't express to you how high quality this book is. It's so incredibly beautiful. It's so incredibly gorgeous. It's so incredibly like emotional and real. Like this lesson of like, am I making the world worse by trying to make the world better? It's just fantastic. Like I will be a forever Mouse Guard fan at this point. Bunk. Okay, Bunk. See, this is why we're friends. Despite me hating The Moon is Following Us, Bunk also chose Mouse Guard in the Near Mint Evergreen Stream. So Bunk is the reason I know about that. Yeah, I wish the moon would stop following us. I wish there was an eclipse. That's how I feel about that series. Okay, let's continue. To the Mythicals. Something about this just screamed 90s image to me. It was just like a very 90s image cover. I think this art is kind of like Brett Boothie, but I could not for the life of me figure out how to buy it online. Okay. However, I think I remember last month or 2 months ago, whenever it was, telling you that I hated this first issue and I dropped it. But I'm a goldfish, and I forgot that. And so then the second issue came out, I was like, oh, right, it's that Cullen Bunn book that's based on some kind of a board game, and I'm going to keep reading it. Well, I'm really glad that I did, because I loved this issue. Script by Cullen Bunn, art by Christopher Minton, colors by, I can't read that, I'm sorry, Amy Hamilton, and letters by Frank Sedovic, who I usually really, really like. Here's the thing. In the first issue of this, it was so setup-y, and it was so, like, introducing all of the different kinds of classes or characters there could be in this game to kind of, like, wink, like, hey, we're at Park Place right now, on the way to Broadway. Like, oh, it's a Monopoly comic, wink. That it was very that, and I was just like, I don't play this game, so this is being lost on me, right? No nostalgia for the property. This issue actually got into what I think is the actual gameplay, which is like trying to figure out who the killer is. I guess maybe it's a deduction game or an RPG. I truly don't know. But this was actually good. It was fun. It was interesting. Like, and the thing I appreciate about the art is I think I was too zoomed in on the art because it doesn't really work blown up really well. It looks very aliased and very scratchy, but then I inadvertently zoomed out and I saw one of these pages more at this size than it would be in print. And I kind of realized in print, this probably looks amazing. Like this art team and this color team is doing just enough to make this book probably look really good on a printed page, and it doesn't look great zoomed in. So, I mean, this is basically a locked house murder mystery, which is my favorite genre. I love Clue. I love Knives Out. I love Agatha Christie. I love all of that kind of thing. So now that we're past the very, like, this is a toy, this is a game aspect of it, and we're into the fact that we're in a locked house and it's a mystery, and the mystery, the people that are getting killed, by the way, are being, like, eviscerated. So there's something, like, magical or mystical or vampiric or something in this house with them. And so now we're starting to see all the people look squirrely and trying to play the deduction game of, like, which one of them is the secret monster. So I don't know if that's what the actual game is like, but just, like, the art worked for me, the colors worked for me, and I felt that I was really engaged in the mystery. I track down this book, Fanava Nova, because I thought this cover was so good that I was like, I'm in. If you're an indie book and you're doing a cover this good with a logo this good and it looks this clean, I'm going to check you out. And it turns out this is on Global Comics. So you can go and read it right now. And I read the first issue and the second issue. So I'm going to talk about them both. But the first issue was out last year. So this is written by Vaughn Coleman with art from Philip Cruz, colors from Jesse Hagee, and letters by George Medina. And this is about this really interesting world where, like, there's these mythical heroes. They're very much like the JSA. Like, they're the cool, awesome heroes of the world. And they fight, like, a huge, huge war. And we're in the post-war era of this world. And some of the heroes have died and gone away, and some of them are still here. And it's about this kid who lost his father in the wake of this war, not to the war itself, but to basically like a terrorist attack after the war is over. And this writer, Vaughn Coleman, actually lost his father and his uncle in the 9/11 terrorist attack. So it's very personal to him, and it's clearly very, very drawn from his own experience. And so he's now this kid who's lost his father and who loves living in this world of heroes, but also has like a resentment towards this world of heroes because it's the world that took his father from him. And then he, when he becomes a hero, wants to immediately put it to use in a very Spider-Man way, but he also is addicted to the mythology of this world and being now part of it as being a hero. So he's like kind of torn between the, you know, great power, great responsibility and wanting to take a selfie, which I think is like a really realistic way to write a teenage character who got their powers for the first time, especially in the modern day, that it's like not, you can't overly moralize, like that they are who they are in the modern day. They exist in this modern world. And I just think that Vaughn Coleman like captured it perfectly. I will say it drags a little bit only because we've seen hero origin stories so many times. And I feel like if we were reading a Marvel or DC comic book, we would be like, get through the damn origin story. Like, we don't want to keep reading the origin story. We know this. But I think because Vaughn Coleman is like doing his own independent world here, I think there's some value in seeing the origin beats. So, I mean, yeah, there's a training montage. There's a page of figuring out how to snap his fingers to make the lightning come out. And I think that we've seen that so many times in comic books at this point in our savviness as readers, that sometimes it's hard on a meta level to fully commit to enjoying a comic who's playing out those beats. But I think this plays it out so faithfully and with such careful attention to detail and who this character really would be in this world that I felt like I wanted to go with it. So then last week, this issue came out, and this is the cover that caught my eye because I was like, oh, like again, such a good cover of Fanava Nova, like so cool. And I love that it's like this kid hero, but he seems like he's like really in danger. But there was a little bit of a bait and switch with this cover because this is not actually the story that's on the inside. It's all by the entirely same team. By the way, that first issue was like 74 pages. The second issue is of a normal length. But again, it really is playing out this idea of like, let's build this universe from scratch. There are these heroes that still live from this kind of classic JSA hero group. And what happens when there's a new hero and they have to decide if this kid is like worthy of being a hero in this world. I just really love it. It's everything I like about indie comics. It's everything I like about super comics. And the art is really good. Like Philip Cruz is the real deal. And this coloring, you often hear me on these smaller indie books that are trying to do superhero. You hear me saying the colorist just doesn't understand what Big 2 colors look like. And it's because Big 2 is so synonymous with superhero. If you don't know how to do that color look, it's hard to sell your indie superhero book. This colorist, Jorge Medina or George Medina, he clearly understands how that is. And so it sells the book so hard just by virtue of having the right kind of color. So I'm going to keep reading this. I don't know how often it's coming out. I think he kickstarts every issue. I would actually think about going in on this on Kickstarter so I don't have to wait for the next Global Comics issue to come out because I just thought it was really, really cool. Plague House. This almost was my indie pick of the week because I loved the last issue so much. Written by Michael Conrad, the same writer who did In Bloom, and drawn and lettered by Dave Chisholm. This was not quite my indie pick of the week, but I loved this. So this is about this group of 3 paranormal investigators, but the main guy is the main investigator, and then he's got a priest that kind of handles the religious stuff a little bit, and then he's got the they, them on the team with the pink hair who handles all the video and stuff. And there's like 3 simultaneous things happening in this issue, all of which excited me so much. There's them going on more haunts and like shooting their TV show on these haunts, which kind of montaged by, and I didn't like it at first, but then later there's a reason they montage them. Then there's the main guy goes on this TV show, and the TV show is showing clips from his show, but he's being interviewed. And the way that Dave Chisholm handled this layout was so cool to me. Like showing individual frames from the television, but then the whole frame, instead of a letter balloon pointing towards the frame, the whole frame of TV points towards the dialogue that goes with the frame. That to me is brilliant and such a great example of somebody who illustrates and does their own lettering and how well that can work. And just this whole TV interview sequence like really worked for me. It was so inventive. I've never seen anybody do anything quite like this before in my life. Then there's the turn, there's the twist. First of all, I had to point out this because I'm a huge fan of Hunter S. Thompson and Ralph Steadman, who illustrated a lot of Hunter Thompson books, including Fear of Lono and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This page, it's so deliberately Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I find myself certain that Dave Chisholm was definitely referencing that here. But the twist that comes at the end that ties in the fact that they did a montage of all these haunts, ties in the fact that this guy's on a media tour, and then twists what you thought you understood about that and gives it a new layer that also kind of it goes with this murder that's been interspersed in the background through the whole issue of it's a murder of a murderer, that they've been investigating the haunt of the house where he did his murders, but it all ties up in the end. Mwah. Perfect. I'm addicted to this comic book. Poison Ivy. I've been a little bit over this G. Willow Wilson series. In my write-up for Crushing Crisis this week, I was like, I don't think she had any plot after the first 2 years. I think she had 2 years worked out, and she had no plot after issue 24, and now we're 9 more issues in, and it's all just boring and dumb. Well, sometimes Crisis is wrong, because this issue was spectacular. First of all, Brian Level's fine last issue, but there's just no replacing Marcio Takara as the primary artist here, colored by Arif Prianto. And this issue, actually something happened. Like, I really felt like recently this book has just been Poison Ivy walking. It's been a lot of walking. We've walked all over, and we've talked to people from the green and the gray and the whatever, but it just hasn't felt like there's been like a tangible happening. And in this issue, something happens. We find out Pam, the HR lady, maybe is being poisoned just by being in proximity to Poison Ivy. I mean, it's right there in the name. And Poison Ivy decides that she really wants to continue to remake this marshy town into something that respects the natural world that surrounds it, instead of just being this technological eyesore, although it's not technological, but just the idea of buildings as technology. And so she does that by collaborating with this, Peter Undine. I love the design of this man with his orcas as a head. And this beat that plays out here, I love this so much, that as he's turning into a flower, he's like touch starved, because not only is he not human anymore, but he's like poisonous, and Poison Ivy's like, yeah, I know all about that. Do you need a hug? And like, it just really works. So I feel a little bit bad that for ragging on this so long, but to be fair, we did go a whole arc after issue 24 with this being really boring. But I do kind of feel like we're back here. James saying, I feel like they're setting up the end arc with Janet for HR. Yeah, it does feel like this maybe has a planned ending at like issue 36 or issue 40, and we're sort of tilting in that direction at this point. But who knows? If it's a good seller for DC, they have no reason to cancel it. But the question is there anybody they could bring on after G. Willow Wilson who would like get the level of excitement right as G. Willow Wilson? I choose not to look that gift horse in the mouth. We're 33 issues deep into a Poison Ivy comic, and that is pretty cool. I don't read Pop Kill by Jamie Palmiotti. I did read Psylock, however, and this was an interesting read for me. So I've been rooting for Alyssa Wong all this time because I do like them writing Quanon as Psylock, but I've just felt like the thing I keep saying about this book is it feels like the book is exactly the book you think you will get as Psylock. Like, it's Psylock frees some children because she's got issues with children as captive. She has a psychic breakdown about her identity because she has a psychic breakdown about her identity. And I just feel like there is power in hewing to the expectation, but sometimes you've got to like do something a little bit different and a little bit interesting. This current arc where she's very much struggling with her identity, I was like, oh, are we doing more of the same? But the thing that was great about this was that this actually kind of was an X-Men story. It was a team story. It was about Psylocke, Rogue, and Magic all fighting against Death Dream, who's one of the new kids, the outliers from Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men. This is better than every issue of Uncanny X-Men that I've read. This gets Rogue better. This makes Death Dream more interesting. I think Alyssa Wong actually maybe should be writing a team book back. I think actually their approach to writing all of these characters are much more interesting than their approach to writing single characters in Deadpool and Captain Marvel. Maybe the reason they're always pulling in so many characters into a cast and kind of diluting the cast so much is maybe they should be writing a team book. By the way, Vincenzo Caruto's art, you try to tell me this does not look like Pepe Larra's. And again, Pepe Larra's is not the only artist out there. He's not the platonic ideal of great art. But I just think that this is so strong. And to be getting art and colors this strong too from Fierce Fento Sujo on a book that's like a B or C tier book like Psylock is amazing. And I also love that Moises Hidalgo, who's the other artist on this book, traded off art duties on this issue. And his art did look different, but it still actually blended in well and in a way that worked. I just thought this was spectacular. This is probably the best issue of Psylocke so far, not just because it had Rogue in it, not just because it had magic in it, but because it really felt like the plot was like fully cooking and it was complex. And it just feels like maybe the thing that Alyssa Wong needs is not less stuff in her books or their books. Maybe they need more stuff in their books. James Abel saying, fun action issue, need more magic, but I understand there's a Psylocke book. The only part I'm not sure about is the hidden camera. So I kind of like the development of the hidden cameras because, again, I just think more characters in play is more interesting. Cruel Angel saying, looks like Squannon got to play Ghostbuster for the second arc. Not sure I'm sticking with this if it makes it past 10. I think it's on the right trajectory for me. Like, I was not impressed with it before. I've been increasingly impressed with it. So I don't know that it's my favorite book, but it's doing the right things. Red Sonja Attacks Mars, I am not reading. Resurrection Man, spoilers, I hated this more than I hated The Moon Is Following Us. I know you all like Ram V. I like Ram V. He's got great hair. I don't understand. Here's the thing. I'm one of the few people who already loves Resurrection Man. So to have a book that has that title and then is kind of just about some metaphysical thing, I just don't care. I don't care. There's nothing to care about because basically this is just doing this butterfly effect sliding doors thing of like, what if you've now died a final time and have power over all of life and death and time, so can go back and look at what life would have been different, how life would have differed if you make different choices, which I just feel like, yeah, it's cool to do that with Resurrection Man, but you got to make me care about something in the story, and I just don't think I connect to anything here yet. Like, it's a man who can't die, and he's reliving his own life. Like, I guess that sounds cool as the words are coming out of my mouth, but I just can't figure out why. I just don't understand the why. So I might drop this. It's Black Label. It's not in continuity, so I don't have a reason to keep reading it, and I don't want to beat up on Ram V every week. I really respect Ram V, but I was like rolling my eyes and gritting my teeth through this entire, I really truly hated it. It was like a 0.5 for me. And I get it's not bad. It's just so deeply not for me. And I don't know if there's a lot of value in me coming to you to talk about things that are just deeply not for me. You know, James Abel saying, the journey of life continues. This issue is a showcase of war and the impact on an individual and how we see things with new eyes during and after it. Okay, so people are getting something from it. I thought it was stupid. So, and also I didn't like the art. Ripperland I don't read from Street Orlando. I do like Sam and Twitch, and I read it. Although I will always rag on why do we need a banner that goes across the cover and then also a corner slash banner. Get your act together, Todd McFarlane. But actually, this continues. I forgot this while I was reading it. Jordan Barrell is actually reading. He's actually writing this, and McFarlane is just doing additional script at this point, and I just think it has gotten so much tighter. Thomas Nailchick's art in this is incredible, really good colors. The letters from Tom Orzechowski, it just feels like once Todd McFarlane got out of the way, all of a sudden this book is like cooking. But the other reason it's really cooking is we can see Sam and Twitch together now. So much of the first year of this book has been about them being apart from each other in the first 12 issues because they were on the outs. They were basically having a couple spat as a pair of detectives, and this is the first issue where we see them actually detecting together, and I kind of just had this rush of like, finally we're back. Like this is why people like Sam and Twitch. We're here. I get it now. And it was really good. And as they're investigating this, Twitch killed a guy who was already dead. How is that the case? And so now they're trying to investigate this drug that maybe keeps people's bodies and minds going even after they've experienced physiological death. And it's getting like creepier and creepier. And like, this is what I've always been promised from Sam and Twitch, that it's like a book about two regular dirtbag New York City detectives that are like, keep falling headfirst into the supernatural world of Spawn. And also the art was just really good. Really, really good. So much depth. And I just feel like also, I don't know if there's a collaboration between FCO plus Ciencia and Sheila Saldana, or if it's just Tom Orzechowski on its own. But I've been having trouble in past issues with this lettering style where the letters are right on the art because it keeps getting put on stuff that's so contrasty. You see it a little bit down towards the bottom on the bottom left panel of this page where like it just doesn't quite work. But in this issue, I feel like even in that panel, the contrast of the background has been made more, not as contrasty, so the letters stand off of it better. So I felt like it was really readable. I'm actually finally just really, really enjoying this. I did think of a quick shout out to Tiger Eyes. I'm going to be hanging out with him in just 23 short hours to reveal all of the titles that are in the top 60 of the Tiger Eyes DC Most Wanted second annual poll. Okay, let's keep moving, shall we? Sam Wilson, Captain America. This book has had like 3 different artists. This artist has been on it in the past, Eder Messias. I didn't like him the first time around. It was okay this time around. First of all, this cover's a lie. Storm is in this book for like 1 panel. I do love a Tarn Clark cover. Second of all, this book by Greg Pak and Evan Narcisse, unfortunately, this was just a disaster. It was just a fucking disaster. It didn't make any sense. The action didn't make any sense. This, you know, I have a problem with scope problems where a book tries to make a set piece so big and then the set piece doesn't read. And the set piece of this book is like they're falling from this flying city. And so the whole issue has to take place in the air, but we only have 1 or 2 characters with wings. Spoilers, they give Red Hulk wings to even it out. It just feels like if you've got to spend pages upon pages making excuses for why characters can fly, maybe this issue-long set piece of aerial combat was not the right set piece for your comic book. Also, it just doesn't, the plot didn't make sense. It wasn't satisfying. I think that Evan Narcisse and Greg Pak, both of whom I love on their own, did have a good handle on Sam Wilson and his supporting cast, but the story they thought of to put them all in play was a terrible story. Nobody's going to remember this. Nobody's going to go back to this with fondness. This was just kind of like a trashy bad comic, and now it is over. Speaking of which, I did read Scorched, number 40, which is the team book in the Spawn universe. This is written by John Layman, although it's got additional script from Todd McFarlane. Let me tell you, you can tell when he's writing the additional script. It's got art from Steven Scovia, colors from Dine Ribeiro, which I really enjoyed, and letters from Annual Design. This, you know, by the way, I always love these B covers. Whoever is drawing these, oh my sweet goodness. I think this is, I don't know if this is Federico Sabatini or Raymond Gay who's doing this one, but I love this cover. So, so cool. So I enjoy that this pushed the plot forward, because there's this dissent in the team, and it's all kind of around this the 2 people, the Reaper, who comes back, and the Redeemer, and that they're in a fight. And what John Layman does successfully here is he gives us a little kernel of Spawn past history to remind us, because it's literally from Spawn 29, which was in the 1990s, and he connects it to what's going on in this team, and so that's cool. But I just feel like I've been reading this for 6 or 7 issues now, and I still don't understand what's happening. Like, the team's not going anywhere, nobody's doing anything, there's no real conflict, but by the end of the issue, he brings it back to there actually being a new baddie and a new conflict on the team. And I'm like, okay, maybe we're finally going somewhere, but I don't know. John Layman is pretty good at team books, and he had like a little inkling of a start a few issues ago, but I don't know how you can go a whole arc and have a team that feels like they're literally standing in the same spot they've been standing in for 6 issues. What is happening here? And then, hilariously, Steven Segovia also drew Secret 6. How is he fast enough to draw 2 comics that are coming out on a monthly basis? I don't know. This is written by Nicole Maines, who's the actor of the Dreamer on TV. Kenneth Craley, I see you there in the comments. You're not going to like what I have to say about this, or maybe you will. It's colored by Rain Brado and letters by Steve Wands. This is another disaster book. This is a disaster. There's no reason for the Secret 6 to be together. The only reason they're together is to recap Absolute Power. Every single page is them just recapping what Absolute Power was. And I realized that that's like a rookie mistake for Nicole Maines, who's a pretty new comic book writer, that like she just doesn't seem to understand that you need to give us things that are happening in real time for these characters for us to fall in love with them. They can't just talk about the last cool event that happened all the time. But then when she briefly does a page, and this is Deadshot and Catman in like in dress up garb talking to each other, the dialogue made no sense. It felt like she just went, and I'm not accusing her of this, I'm just saying it felt like she just went to Chat GPT and she was like, write me witty repartee between 2 rogues. Like, it didn't feel grounded in who these characters were at all. So we have this whole issue where everybody just walks around and keeps like being like, absolute power. Man, that sucked. Dreamer, you kind of sucked during absolute power. And here's the crux. Here's the center of my problem with this book, which, if you remember, I liked issue 1 and I really didn't like issue 2 or issue 3. I think because Nicole Maines was the actress of Dreamer on TV, she's kind of assuming that if she just writes the character how the character would speak, which is how she would speak, we will all get it. But the thing that's actually happening is that the only content we're really getting for Dreamer, and this is going back a whole year to the last thing that Nicole Maines wrote, is everybody saying, Dreamer, you are always making decisions for yourself, you asshole. They never explain Dreamer's powers. They never explain her motivation. They never explain what she cares about. They never explain what her goals are. All it is a whole year of people telling Dreamer that she's an asshole. And I get the sense that Nicole Maines thinks that this is like cool because she's like, oh, like, because this character's imperfect. She's messed up, just like me. And that's how I acted her. And that would be cool. But by not giving us any inner life for her, she's robbing us of the ability to sympathize with her. So I don't think that Nicole Maine's a bad writer. I don't think she's a bad author. I don't think her plot is bad. I think she's like fundamentally misreading how to endear us as the reader to Dreamer. I am dropping Silverhawks. Hello, I'm here for a special announcement. I am dropping Silverhawks. It's written by Ed Brazon, art by George Combatius, colors from Ellie Wright, letters from Jeff Eggleberry. Here's the thing. I do have an amount of affection for the show. I love these toys. Monstar is one of my favorite toys of all time. I love the cartoony way that this is drawn. Like it evokes cartoon, but it is slow rolling so much on this idea of assembling the Silverhawks and like, who are the Silverhawks? They're this peacekeeping team. They fly around in space, but we're not even there yet. We haven't even assembled them yet. We're just still seeing like the origin of the origin of the origin of Silverhawks. And for a show that there's not that many people who have that much affection for, and I'm one of them, you are just moving too slow for me. I mean, it was cool to see Monstar in action. He's so cool. He's so fierce. It was fun to see him be brutal. I liked that this book was not afraid to get bloody, even though it was cartoony, and that was appealing to me. But 3 issues with no, like, where are the Silverhawks? You can't go this far on a nostalgia property without actually giving me any of the nostalgia. Okay, so now we come to Snow Monkey. I've actually really enjoyed so many Red 5 comics in the past. They're a small indie publisher that I think I skipped this because I like Snow Monkey, whatever, indie comic, don't care. And then when I saw this from Red 5, I was like, damn it. So maybe I'm going to try to pick this up next time when issue 2 comes out. I'm not reading Sonic the Hedgehog, so I didn't read Sonic the Hedgehog 78. I don't read Joe's Johnny Quest, Space Quest. Great cover, though. Really spectacular cover. I did read Spider-Gwen Ghost Spider, and this issue is a double whammy. It's Stephanie Phillips writing Ghost Spider and also writing Jean Grey in the same book. But Jean Grey says something here that was so interesting to me, and I think like actually explained why I've been hating this so much. So she's hating everything by Stephanie Phillips so much, but especially her Jean Grey. So I'm actually going to spend 60 seconds talking about Jean Grey, and then we'll spend 60 seconds talking about this book. Gwen is narrating to herself, and Jean starts responding to her narrating. And Gwen says, well, this is embarrassing. And Jean says, do you always narrate what you're doing while you're doing it? And Gwen says, not always. She probably knows I'm lying. And Jean says, she does. I didn't show you this page because it's a big double page spread and you wouldn't be able to see it, but it really struck me that the reason I hate how Stephanie Phillips writes Jean Grey so much is that Stephanie Phillips seems to have this idea that because Jean Grey is this evolved psychic creature, that she wouldn't narrate to herself, that like her mind and her actions are so unified that she just thinks and acts and it's all of one piece and she doesn't actually have to think to herself about it. So even though it's kind of a funny beat in this book to play with like, oh, Gwen Stacy, ha ha ha, you're always narrating to yourself, which is also kind of a joke about Spider-Man, right? And how Spider-Man always narrates to himself. It kind of proves the point of why I feel so distant from Jean Grey in the actual Jean Grey, because Stephanie Phillips doesn't want to let us into Jean Grey. She wants to have everybody else narrate Jean Grey and have Jean Grey almost be like a character whose thoughts we never can see. And so Jean Grey's book doesn't work for me. But what was weird is that this issue really, really, really did work for me. First of all, I have to call out this art combination. But now we're going to start the timer for this actual issue. This art combination by Paolo Villanelli and Matt Milla, they're doing shading that I've never quite seen before. And I don't know where the pencils end and the colors begin. Part of it, like, they've got this really great, crisp, cartoony, comic booky stuff. But then when the cosmic stuff happens, it almost reminds me of Jay Lee a little. Like, there's so much black and ink, but then there's also this, like, ink washy, like, almost like spray painty shading on Gwen Stacy to give her dimension. And then it's also in Jean Grey and it's on her face. Like, it's something I haven't seen in a really long time. And it's like really new and exciting to me. But also this book like kind of works because by having Jean Grey in Gwen Stacy's head and like commenting on Gwen Stacy's thoughts as she's thinking them, it kind of finally gives us Gwen Stacy that feels like an indelible, unique character, which has been my complaint here. She hasn't felt like Gwen Stacy, who's a drummer. She hasn't felt like Gwen Stacy from Air 65. And with Jean Grey inside of her thoughts being like, you are that Gwen Stacy. That is your power. Your power is that you're unique. To have Jean Grey actually verbalize that, like, actually brought the character to life. So not only did I like Jean Grey in this book, not only did I like Gwen Stacy in this book, I liked the whole issue. It was just a really good issue. Now, I don't think that we need to be doing a story about Gwen Stacy having the cosmic cube. I think that's the wrong story to be telling with Gwen Stacy, but if you let go of your expectation that the story is the wrong story, this was executed very, very, very well. And it shows me that Stephanie Phillips has got it. Like, there is a reason I used to really enjoy her writing. There's a reason I know that I can enjoy her. And I think she just has me, I don't know if it's the editorial or if it's the stories she thinks is cool personally, but like the choices she's making on her books boggle me. And seeing her have such a two-hander character piece that was such a good version of both of these characters just gives me hope that maybe there's something good that she could still write for Jean Grey or Ghost Spider. Jamie C47 picked up the first trade of Phoenix and really hated it, the worst of the FTA trades for me. Yeah, it started out giving me some hope and then it descended quickly. But again, this art, just this like spray painty quality of how they're shaded. Nobody else is doing this. There's nobody else in comics that looks like this right now. I'm a Paolo Villanelli fan, or maybe it's Matt Miller's colors. I truly don't know. Okay, let's keep moving. Star Wars. It is the Star Wars. It's a new Star Wars series written by Alex Segura, who I don't always love, and I certainly did not love him on the Battle of Jakku, and also with art from Phil Noto, who I love unequivocally and I feel like can do no wrong. So this is an interesting combo for me. Here's the positive thing I will say for this book, and then I will say a negative thing. We'll do a complete compliment sandwich. I think Star Wars comics work the best when they can paint with the full palette of what's happening in that period. And something that Marvel has restricted the Star Wars books from doing is that. Because they're always breaking out like, okay, we have Star Wars, but then we have Darth Vader, and then we have Aphra, and then we have Bounty Hunters. And it means that Star Wars only gets to play with Luke and Leia and Han and Lando and Chewie, you know? But I think Star Wars is so much more than that. The movies are so much more than that. And all these side characters who are popular enough to have their own books, like Darth Vader, taking them out of the narrative of Star Wars weakens the main Star Wars story. Now that we're past episode 6, this is picking up in the wake of the Battle of Jakku, so we're like several months after the end of Return of the Jedi. It looks like we're only going to have one book per period. There's one prequels book, one main post-original trilogy book, and then one sequels book. So this means we get to have everybody here. We have the whole main cast, and we have somebody from Bounty Hunters. I get the sense we're going to get to see Aphra turn up at some point, and to me that works. To me, this felt like the beginning of a Star Wars movie much more than many other Star Wars books have, and I loved a lot of Star Wars by Charles Soule that ran from 2020 to 2025. I really liked it on many weeks. You can see me saying many good things about it, but it had that restriction that we couldn't play in the whole world because so many of the other books held more of the world. Back in the Dark Horse years, all of Star Wars tended to be more in one central long-running book, and they only used miniseries to fill in other stuff, and I just think that model works better than to try to have 5 ongoings all in one period. That the complaint I'll make is that I think that Alex Segura writes everybody in this book in this very declarative way. Luke declares things, Han declares things, Leia declares things, and I just think that if this is going to succeed, Segura needs to differentiate their voices more, and this is great because we have actors that he can go and look at and hear the wryness of their voice, hear how they're being written for. All 3 of those characters are very earnest characters, but they're earnest in different ways. Leia's earnestness has a certain expectation of privilege or like right to it. Leia kind of says things and expects people to yes and her. Whereas Luke says things in a very declarative way because he's kind of like, he's grown mysterious. He's gone from being a farm boy who like has a question in every sentence to being somebody who like knows universal truth. And Hand just is funny and like he makes comments offhand. And I just feel like there was a little bit of a Greek chorus thing happening with everybody speaking in the same way here that I hope this book recovers from, because I'm rooting for it. And I want to like a comic book by Alex Segura. And I think he's got the right idea for plot here, which is the compliment I'll leave with. Like this, I'm interested. This idea that the New Republic is like, hey, everybody join hands. Let's sing along. And people are like, you just broke us through from the Empire. Why would we want to join you? Are you just another empire? That's fundamentally interesting. And it ultimately sets up all of the cracks in the facade of this universe that lead to the sequel trilogy. So that's 5 minutes on Star Wars, but that's because I love Star Wars, like Lance McNair, and Lance McNair loves this Phil Noto art. I do too. And Stoops is like, we can talk Star Wars all day, man, and I'm into it. And I have a new hope. I have a hope reborn that this could be a great Star Wars comic, but Alex Segura needs to get the voices right, and we can't play small ball with this plot. It's got to keep the scope that this first issue had. But of course it helps when you got Phil Noto. Also, Phil Noto, who colors himself, by the way, really doing some like interesting non-Phil Noto-like colors some here. Like, he doesn't usually color this flat. He usually does much more shading, but he does the Leia scene in a very deliberate lighting look that is very different than the colors elsewhere, and I really enjoyed that. I also read Star Wars Hyperspace Story, The Bad Batch, Ghost Agents. How many titles can we title the title? Something about this book just makes me angry. I can't explain why. It's written by Michael Morchi, penciled by Reese Hannigan, inked by Elizabeth D'Amico, colored by Michael Atia, and lettered by Tyler Smith. Good letters. Tyler Smith's kind of a friend at this point, so I mean, I would say if the letters were bad, but the letters were good. But I think the problem is, the Bad Batch, they're clearly from like a cartoon or something, and clearly they're, we're meant to like them. And there's all this really well drawn, really well colored stuff, but then the actual story and the action like doesn't track. Like, they're on this waterfall planet and they're trying to jam the signal of a deal that's going on down on the other side of this waterfall. That's so cool. Like, there should be so much cool stuff to write and cool action to show, but it kind of just it turns into them just talking on either side of the waterfall. And there's like, yeah, there's giant sharks, and yeah, there's some attempted action, but I'm like, it just feels like this book, and I felt like this last issue too, it has such a cool setup and it's such a cool plot, and there's so many cool things these characters can do, and all of that setup, and then it just like blows it at the last possible second, and it just has them do the most boring thing. So they are the Bad Batch as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Earth's Mightiest Mutant Storm issue number 8. And this is us finally emerging into a new arc from Maria Iodell, because it feels like we've kind of been in a bunch of one-shot issues ever since the first arc wrapped up. This is drawn by outgoing artist Lucas Wernick, who is handing off to Mario Santoro, who Wernick does layouts and Santoro does finishes here, and it actually looks really, really good. I didn't like the beginning of this issue. I think what I'm coming to realize is I don't really appreciate Maria Iodell's humor that much. And he does the scene that's supposed to be like funny with like Black Panther being like, I don't know if I want to see Storm right now. And then Mr. Fantastic is like, happily married, ha ha ha. Like, I enjoy making fun of men and toxic masculinity. I just don't, I don't find him that funny. So every time we go into like the more humorous stuff, I find myself falling out a little bit. But then the weirdness, the tension, the drama aspect of Iodell's writing, I'm here for. So just like the weirdness of these FBI agents, and one of them is like this weird little fetus in a bubble, and the other guy's got a mask over his mouth. And then Storm goes into an interrogation with this weird alien. Why is this alien working for the FBI? I don't know. And at this point, this is Mario Santoro doing the finishes on Wernick, and I have to say, if this is our new artist, by the way, colored by Alex Guimarães, I'm pretty excited. And then we get all the way to the point, you know this about me, I love superheroes in bureaucracy. I love the idea that Storm has to bring in this briefcase full of paperwork to like prove what she's been doing, and she's talking about the emissions of her city. Like, I just like that. Something about that is fun to me. If you use it as a way to show that the normalcy of the real world is a chink in the armor of the superhero, because the superhero exists in a world where they don't have to worry about bureaucracy because they're a god. And like, Mira Iodell makes that quite literal in this issue, and eventually Storm has had enough of the nonsense and she storms out. Love it. Love it. Well done. Smart. I could do without the jokey stuff, so it wasn't my favorite issue of all time, but I'm on board. Also, I love in the letters page, Iodell's like, in case you thought that Storm had super hair growing abilities, here she is wearing a weave for a rare time. And then he goes into like the comic book continuity of Storm saying that she doesn't wear weaves and she usually just wears her hair natural. And I just love that attention to detail. And I like a Storm comic should care about that. So yeah, I really, really loved it. Not all of it was for me, but enough of it was for me that I'm excited. James Abel saying, Law, Justice, and Society Storm versus the US. I can't be the only one to think this taking inspiration from current events. Jamie C47 saying, love this interrogation stuff. Yeah, I loved it. Storm on Earth and Grounded. I'm liking this run, less so the Eternity stuff. Yeah, I think Storm being grounded to me, that's the other thing that you reminded me of, Jamie C. I just don't know if I care about this Storm as a cosmic being. It just feels like we're trying to Phoenix Storm. I want to see this low stuff. Take us down lower. To the lower level. I want to see Storm interacting with boring stuff and figuring out how to reconcile the fact that she is a goddess with that. That to me is the more interesting. By the way, you all have been sticking around so long. This is a long one and I appreciate it. And I know it's Father's Day and I know it's Sunday, almost dinner time, and I love talking to you all. And I also know some of you are going to see this on replay, and that's cool too. I don't read Super Babes featuring the Femforce. I just had to show this. Sven the Groundhog, Savior from the Stars. I remember in the 90s, this actually made me think of something I wanted to talk about. Reminded me in the 90s that comic book stock, it was the speculation boom. And comic book shops, if a new weird book like this came out, they would just get a couple and put it on the shelf because they would always want to have a few copies in case that book turned into the next thing that got made a cartoon or whatever. So there were always things like this in stores. And you could put out a weird ass #1 like this and you would see it in the store. And I have some of those #1s. I remember #1 like the chromium cover of Zen Intergalactic Assassin, which I have in my collection. Specifically because it was weird and because it was on the shelf and I bought it and also previews, right? Like you would see weird stuff in previews and you would just get the #1 because they were like, it's a #1 collector's issue. And you'd be like, okay. And I just think it's so weird that now, like, there's no store that ordered. I would love to hear about a store that ordered this just on the shelf. I highly doubt that they did. And I didn't see this until this morning. So I didn't even get to see if it could be found online to read. I don't know if I would spend my money on, I mean, it looks inherently hilarious in a goofy way, but maybe I would love it, right? So, but it just feels like, especially with all the trouble Diamond is going through and the way that previews is not even unified anymore, like comics are spread out across Lunar and previews. Some people, Zenoscope is going to start selling direct to stores now. It just feels like, where is that place where anybody, a kid, a teenager, a 20-something, an old person like me, where is the place where we can go to like browse these #1s and get excited? And I think that's part of why I'm so committed to doing this stream in a way where I like show you every cover and we talk about even the books that I'm not reading, because I just feel like that experience is getting lost. And that's how, if we don't do that, comics will keep getting more insular. Like the comic industry will just get smaller and smaller into a tiny, tiny, dense, super dense black hole ball, because you need this weird stuff. This is where the new writers and the new artists and the new fans and the new IP comes from. And I think in a world where it's not visible and it's not on the shelf and we can't see it in previews, we start losing that. So that's a huge reason that this cover is in the lineup today, even though I have no idea what it's about. I don't read Teen Titans Go. This is a new Teen Titans Go series to tie into the new cartoon. I do read Thundercats Lost, which is kind of funny because I hate the main Thundercats title. This is also by Ed Brazon, who we're having a rocky week with so far this week. I hate this cover, which is the Declan Shalvey cover. However, I loved all the other covers. I just think I don't like Declan Shalvey's art. Like, it doesn't really work for me too often. So I just think it's funny that he's turned into this big like cover art star. This alternate cover by Clayton Henry, I love this cover. I don't understand why this wasn't. And then this cover by Mark Bagley, I think. Or no, Ralph. No, this is Mark Bagley. Maybe, I don't know. Now I'm confused. Yeah, this is Mark Bagley. Another great cover. And then there was another one too that was really, really great. I just don't I think those are all, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause because we're not even talking about the book yet. Those are so much more, who is buying this? Who is seeing the title Thundercat? I mean, it's pink, so I like it for that reason. But I just don't understand what's interesting about this to me. This to me is so much more interesting and made me more interested. But I did remember that I loved the first issue of this book because partially I just thought that Rafa Lobesco's art and the colors by Rashan Krishiani were so amazing that I was so drawn in. I love that this is like the alternate mission. This is the ship that got lost in the night. This is the other group of Thundercats that got on another spaceship and had another thing to do. And so they're not our main Thundercats. They're the Thundercats lost. And not only do I love the setup, the art is, I cannot tell you how good it is. Every panel was good. Every page was good. And I like this because it relies on your Thundercats nostalgia. Like, you have to know who Thundercats are and enjoy them, but you don't have to be reading, right? You don't have to be reading the main book. You don't have to remember the cartoon. This just if you know what Thundercats are, that's enough nostalgia to get you through this. And the thing I loved is that it felt like this was going to be a very stranger in a strange land. They're on a planet sneaking around, and it was just going to be insular between the group of them that are lost. No, they actually interact with the Jackal Society on this planet, and so it's just not as, I thought it was going to be a very sneaking around in the wilderness kind of book, and I kind of find that I loved, they went to a bar, they had drinks, and to me that's so much more interesting because it contrasts what we know about the Thundercat Society with this other society. And the main Thundercat story, as we know it, both in the main comic book and in the cartoon from the 80s, is so much as the Thundercats are on their own, they're loners, they're stranded on this planet, and I think to do another book that has that same theme would kind of be repetitive. So I think it's actually really smart to have this book be about a group of lost Thundercats who are trying to understand another society. To that, to me, is so much more interesting. Adam Messenger showing us all people of taste, and all taste is different. Adam Messenger likes that cover the most. Now, I do agree the colors really pop. I mean, anytime you do that watermelon theme, right? Pink and green, that's going to really pop. But I just think for a Thundercats book to just show this guy that's not an anthropomorphic anything on the screen, like, I just put some kind of animal, like just a guy with a gun. This could be any comic book. I just feel like it doesn't say Thundercats to me. Jamie, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. What is Thundercats? It's a cartoon from before my time. So it's this group of anthropomorphic cat people who are basically in a spaceship that they're in like chrono sleep, and they crash on a planet, and and there's not as many of them as they thought there were going to be, and they have to kind of make their own lives. And so it's them kind of learning how, but they're like ancient enemy. I forget if Mumra is their ancient enemy from their own planet, or if he's just the ancient enemy on that planet. But it's about them kind of like learning to work together and live together as this little group of stranded people on the planet, like hoping they can make contact again and like find where the rest of their society is. It's very toyetic. It was very to sell toys, so it's not that deep if you watch the original cartoon, but that's the concept. And it's been rebooted several times over the years to varying success. There's a pretty good early 2000s reboot. So this was a dynamite reboot that I forget if it must have started in 2023, because we're at like issue 17 now. It either started at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024, and this is a second book in that reboot. So that is what it is. Now, you don't have to be sorry for being born in 1999. We will gladly drink your youth. Here, Jamie, we are very happy to have the youths and to benefit from your youthfulness being adjacent. I can't talk for 60 seconds about Two-Face. It was bad. Sorry about it. They had plans that this maybe could go 12 issues if it didn't sell enough. I think there's a reason it didn't sell enough. I can't recommend it. Okay, Ultimate Wolverine. Isn't it nice how Marvel puts all the things I'm going to scream about at the end of the alphabet so you can sit in anticipation the entire episode? So look. I get that the draw of this book is that it's actually the Ultimate X-Men book. I've said this for 5 issues right now. Ultimate X-Men is just doing its manga thing, and this is the actual Ultimate X-Men book. That said, it's not enough for me to just show me 1 or 2 X-Men and be like, ooh, it's Artie and Leech, Ultimate Artie and Leech. Ooh, like that's not a comic book. Nor is this first of all, I did really like the art from guest artist Alex Linz. I liked Alex Linz also on the Namor book. I think I just like Alex Linz. I like that Alex Linz's art looks like it's going to be like a little bit looser and softer and cartoony, but then there's also like a Daniel Warren Johnson quality to it. And I think he's colored extraordinarily well here from Brian Valenza. And also Corey Petit didn't do as many annoying things in the letters on this issue as he's been doing. But this issue is basically just a fight between Sabretooth and Wolverine. And it presupposes that Sabretooth is a good guy in the Ultimate Universe, but that doesn't fully track for me because the Ultimate Universe only really starts diverging from our universe, I guess, in like 1938, based on when makers started to change things. Sabretooth's already an asshole by that point. So I guess that's, it's been 70, 80 years. There was time for Sabretooth to not be an asshole. But I just didn't think it was very compelling to hinge this whole comic on, look, it's Ultimate Artie and Leech, and then Sabretooth and Wolverine have a fight. And also at one point, Sabretooth regrows a whole arm in like 2 seconds of panel time, which was very confusing. I thought he had like reattached his existing arm. I just don't think this comic is very good is the problem. And it's a shame because, but I think for me, what it's exposing is this is why I don't like other universes. I just want to read the main continuity. I have no patience for the like, surprise, it's a character you haven't seen in this universe yet, and here they're good, here they're cool, here they're evil. Like, I don't care. Tell a good story. And then it feels like by the time we get past the finger guns part of a universe that's different than the main universe and get to the story, I'm either so weary or I don't care about the characters at all at that point, and then I'm checked out. And it's interesting because I'm deliberately trying to give a chance to this Ultimate Universe. I'm trying to give a chance to the Absolute Universe, but I'm kind of being reminded in real time why I don't F with Ultimate Universes, because it just annoys me. Every decision in the universe annoys me. So I guess I'm still reading this. I didn't even scream. I haven't reached a rage point like I've reached on Black Panther, where I have to drop it. But I'm starting to think I'm almost done with the Ultimate Universe. Not many of the books are very compelling to me at this point. Jamie C saying, hinging on Artie and Leech work for me. I will do anything for them. Well, see, it's for you. And Samantha Jane is here. Hello, Kira, to you. Okay. Uncanny Valley. It's the penultimate issue of this Tony Fleecs book. This is just such a clever book about a cartoon world adjacent to the real world. So we see a real world kid who's been captured by a cartoon. But unfortunately, this issue just didn't have very much to say. This, again, kind of felt like a book that he had such a great plan for the first 5 or 6 issues. And that one issue, issue 6, I think it was, that was like a one-shot, was such a bombshell. One of my favorite issues I've read in the past year. But then it kind of feels like this second arc just had nowhere to go. Like it just doesn't feel like anything's really happened. So I still love this concept, and the thing I really love, and I don't think I got a page for it, no I didn't, is that while it's very Roger Rabbit, while the real world people are in the cartoon world, they can do cartoon things and use those powers. So the kid needs to send a message to his grandfather and his mom, and so he bangs his head against the wall until he sees stars, and he's like, no, I didn't need stars. And then he keeps banging his head until birds come out, and then he takes the little bird in his finger and he's like, fly, and the bird goes to tell the message, and then he shakes his head and the bump in his head goes away, because that's what a cartoon would do. That's very clever. I just think that the first half of this series had so much portentous story hanging over it, because it was kind of like teasing of this cartoon world that's real but not real, that's adjacent to our world. And the back half of the series has just been this kid being captured again and again. It just feels like we ran out of story too early. Do love this artwork by Dave Watcher, though. I think Dave Watcher is like a superstar. It's crazy to me that he's not one of the top tippity-top artists that people talk about right now, because I think he's amazing. I second guessed why I didn't read Vanishing Point, because I saw this cover again as I was putting this together. I was like, but I love this. But it's Mark Russell, who I don't always love, and it's an anthology book. And I'm like, Mark Russell plus anthology book, I'm going to be frustrated, so I didn't read it. I don't read The Walking Dead Deluxe, although we got to the part with the bat, with the barbed wire. It has a name. Bertha, Rhonda, something. The bat has a name. I do remember that. West Coast Avengers, this, I was complaining about the layouts in this book for a while, but it's the same artist, Danny Kim. I just think Danny Kim I think sometimes he's too clever for his own good, because this book that just used some clever layouts to show motion, to show flight, to show people in a video call, that really worked for me. And I loved that somehow his art is back to this kind of like funny indie vibe, as colored still by Arthur Hesley, that it had in the first few issues. It feel like it went away for a couple of issues in the middle, but we're back and I really love it. It's really funny. And I just think I get this feeling that Jerry Dugan just has the right characters. Like, he picked the right group of characters that he's really good at writing. He's good at writing this Blue Bolt guy. He's good at writing Wonder Man. He's good at writing Tony Stark. He's great at writing Spider-Woman. I just get the sense that it's just the right cast in the right book with the right art at the right time. And it really works for me. And I loved how brutal the Ultron stuff has happened. Like, there's this very funny West Coast Avengers plot, but then the actual main plot of Ultron and the villain escalates to intense brutality very fast. And I like that it's like a funny book with like a brutal villain. It really, really is working for me a lot. So I love this issue, and my complaints about this book seem to have been erased. Stoops also saying it is very good stuff. Which brings us finally to the last book in my poll, Jed McKay's X-Men. Now, this book I thought was a really interesting lesson in how much of a difference inking makes. And we don't see inkers on a lot of books anymore. Now that pencilers are more and more penciling digitally, they do their own finishes digitally, and so they send it right to the colorist. But Netho Diaz, who's the penciler here, has 3 different inkers on him, which really probably means that they're doing finishes. Like, he's doing loose work and they're finishing it, because that's kind of what inking is now. And I just thought it was really interesting. So here's Netho Diaz, which I think is normal inker, because it looks a lot like Stegman. But it's very round. The faces have these very smirky qualities to them. But then if we go to the end of the issue, here's him with a different inker. It looks like a totally different artist. The faces are different. The angles are different. The lines are more rough. It just really shows you how different finishes could be. This is a great panel to linger on, because it shows the Cyclops team of ragtag mismatched X-Men going up against this new group of mutants or whoever who say that they're the X-Men. I just wish these X-Men books would settle down and use the characters we know and love. And I know part of why they're not doing that is they're trying to invite everybody into the tent. And as readers who are lapsed readers who are new readers from the cartoon, and to do that, they're like, look, we're creating new characters in front of your eyes. But when you have a franchise like X-Men that has such a rich history of continuity, of characters, I just think it's so wasteful to like constantly be reinventing 5, 10, 20 new characters at a time. All the books in the line are doing this right now, and it makes me really feel like I could look at every one of these characters and be like, there's an existing character we could have used here. And I don't think that I feel that way just because like I'm a continuity monkey and I want everything to refer to continuity. It just feels like nothing interesting is ever going to happen with these characters. We know this is what happens in X-Men. We just make a bunch of stuff and then the next person just throws it out. And I just think part of what made Krakoa so appealing to me is it was all about not throwing things out. It was all about bringing back characters that we brought back WizKid. We brought back everybody that was from the past. And we added new things. And I just want to see this new From the Ashes line, instead of starting clean from the ashes and trying to reinvent everything, I just want to see them reference more of what makes me love X-Men. Because right now, it's a lot of books about a very small group of X-Men, and it's failing to make me feel like I love this thing that is my favorite thing, or should be my favorite thing, which is X-Men comics. That said, I continue to like the way that McKay is writing all the X-Men cast here. I just found trying to care about this new group of characters with these new group of powers in fight, I found it very boring and hard to follow and hard to care about. And that brings us to the end. So I'm just going to scroll out. Oh, wait. We got one X-Men comic live from James Abel. Old Men with his new men. I don't care. But I did love the ending. It's right from Pacific Rim, a movie that I do enjoy. So I'm just going to scroll up a little bit and see if I know I missed some stuff from Kenneth Crayley. So I just want to, and I still have some Masterworks stuff. So a lot of people telling me to let my body rest. That's why the catchphrase is repair. What is it called? Resolve, repair, recover. That's why I need that, because I usually don't let myself rest. So I appreciate your sentiments. The resting is happening. Okay, so that's where we left off. Next, imagine not mocking me. I will never own 60 omnibus. Famous last words if ever were spoken. The thing is, though, my love of DC is not rooted in physical the way that it is with Marvel, because I didn't have enough DC in the 90s to make me like covet. And I mean, I've got some DC here. I have this honker, right? And I have all these DC Finest, but I don't read omnibuses a lot. And I always say, if Marvel had already had epics when I started Marvel, which I only missed by 4 years, I would have never bought any omnibuses, because the epics are exactly what I love. I love books I can pick up and quickly read. And honestly, the art in an omnibus is not even that much bigger. So like, I don't know. I could always be wrong. I do have a DC omnibus in my cart on IST right now that I keep thinking about pulling the trigger on. But I just don't think I'm ever going to have Marvel. There's so many things I want in omnibus because I have specific nostalgia for them or interest in them. I just don't have that layer of obsession with DC the way that I do with Marvel. Lance is, and now I'm going to open the window again because it looks like the powerful sun has died out a little bit. Lance is exclusively down to epics and finest collecting wise. So yeah, I wasn't going to buy any Masterworks anytime soon. Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess like if oh no, it is still in 10th Sun. I'm still in New Zealand. I guess if I could have any message for Marvel, and is like, learn when to get off the stage, right? There's something to be said for making an exit in a planned way. I just think it would have, even if they're losing some money in the book, and I know the economics of that. I've been the person who does profit and loss for my company before. Like, I understand that. Even knowing the economics, you just say, hey, gang, this is the last few Masterworks. You crank the price up a little bit. You take a little bit of loss you can, but you gain more from a company, as a company, in the long run, from ending something in a way that people appreciate than just letting it die quite suddenly. Okay. Andrew specifically purchased Thor Masterworks 23 to get the Simonson run with closer to the original colors, so emailed to ask if they can finish the Simonson run. I think there are a few kind of unfinished business ones. I think like we've been through this, and I might actually do a separate stream about this to just like deep dive into like where each one should get. But yeah, I think, and also I think the sales are there for Thor. I mean, maybe they're not. Maybe Marvel's like, wow, we thought people would buy this and nobody's buying it. But I have to think that there are enough people who love that Walt Simonson Thor and want it in the original colors that there's just like X-Men. It's weird to me that they're just like giving up on Masterworks all at once. You know they could sell 3 more X-Men Masterworks to get to the end of Claremont. You know they can sell 2 more Thor Masterworks to get the end of Simonson. So it's weird to me that the message is not, hey gang, the sales are really tailing off here. We're only going to commit to doing X-Men and Thor unless we see a groundswell of pre-orders, or we're going to kickstart an Avengers, or like, just like some other message about the other ones, but I have to think that even Amazing Spider-Man, maybe it's getting softer because we're getting into stuff that's covered by epics. And I'm sure the X-Men one is getting softer because we're into material that's so well omnibused. But I have to think the X-Men and the Thor ones still pay for themselves. I could be wrong. The restoration costs a lot of money, I'm sure. Marvel Rivals. Oh, we already talked about the Marvel Rivals thing. Okay. And then everybody was laughing at me losing my mind about the moon is following us. I was so angry when I was reading it. I can't even express. Lance McNair, as for novels, not Star Wars, I'm reading the latest East of Eden. I'm loving it so far, probably even more because it's not Wheel of Time. I'm enjoying Wheel of Time, but after 5 books straight, I needed to take a break. I wish I had more time to read novels. I have such a stack of novels, but you know, I was saying on Blue Sky last night, like, it's great when every part of your life is fun, but then it also feels like there's no way off the fun treadmill. Like my work recently has been really, really cool. I've been really loving it. Love doing things with Kid Krisis. Love comic books. Love playing music. Love seeing my friends for D&D. I love it all. I love getting to do things in near mint condition. I love the poll, but it kind of is like, I love the poll. Don't clip that out of context, or do, whatever. But it does feel to me like, oh my gosh, I would just, and I love going to the pool, and I love jogging. It's like, I just have such a bounty of love for life right now that I almost just want to get up. But there's so many more things I want to do. I want to do more singing. I want to read more novels. And it's just like, well, finite time. At some point, you got to drop a terrible comic if you want to make time to read a book. Okay. Oh, you all cross-talked with each other so much, and I love it. Happy Poison Ivy gets interesting for me again. Excited to read this series. Yeah, I mean, the first 24 issues are just a hit. They're just a unqualified, totally amazing, brilliant hit. Love, love, love. Bunk saying Dave Kism has been killing it on both Playhouse and Spectrum. Both have been favorites of mine. Yeah, we've established Spectrum. I don't like that it's about made-up music. So when I read a comic about music, I want to go hear the music. So if it's about made-up music, I get turned off very quickly. But his layouts in Playhouse are just like out of this world. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Okay. So Kenny cannot wait until I talk about Action Comics 1067. Me too, because I loved Mark Waid's Action Comics last year on Phantoms. Like, I was addicted. It was like top of poll for me. So I'm really excited to see Mark Waid, and I'm interested to see what Sophie Campbell does with Supergirl, because I do like Sophie Campbell. I just didn't like her on TMNT, and it made me sad that I was so angry about how much I didn't like her TMNT, because historically I do really enjoy her as a creator. So somehow I've got to catch up. I don't know if it's going to be this week, because we have the DC poll tomorrow, and then I think I'm going to do a jamming on comics, which we delayed from last week to this week with Freddie and Omnidog. So keep an eye on Omnidog's channel. So I don't know if this is the week to catch up, but at some point I need to do 3 weeks in a row where I read twice the amount of comics to catch back up. Or do we just like me being a month behind? I don't know. I kind of like the idea of maybe being 2 weeks behind, because then it gives you more time to catch up, but I'm still recommending things you might have missed. I just feel like I'm talking about old news right now that I'm talking about that's like a whole month ago. So some people had to head off and make dinner. We understand that. I've been talking forever. Suicide Squad. They do a good job of explaining that during Dream Team. Yeah, I did read Dream Team, and I do think they explained her powers a little bit better, but still, all of that Dream Team book about Dreamer was still about how Dreamer's an asshole and people don't trust her. Like, it just, at some point, I just think a lot of people make this mistake. It's the same mistake as the Peter Parker mistake we were talking about earlier. You can't have the only thing your character ever is them being an asshole. Like, at some point, then we just start believing the character is an asshole. Like, there's got to be some redeeming qualities to them, and I think her only redeeming quality as a character tends to be her friendship with John Kent. But because John Kent's boyfriend hates her so much, it kind of like even strips that away. I just think it's not just Nicole Main's fault. I'm saying people do it on Spider-Man all the time. You've got to remember to have some kernel of redeeming quality for your character. Everybody loves Kane so much. Kane said goodbye, and like 45 people said goodbye to Kane. I love that. Kane is so great. Lance McGear, that 30-something years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens is ripe for exploration. I agree. And that pretty much brings us to the end. So now I'm going to see if anybody has some last-minute questions and comments. My complaints about X-Men feeling so inconsequential is something I hope that Alex Secor Star Wars comics don't fall into. I don't just want a bunch of wacky adventures with no ambitious storytelling. Yeah, Lance always says the thing that I'm thinking much more succinctly. I originally was never going to buy a post-crisis Wonder Woman omnibus. Adam Messenger, who asks what DC omnibus is in my cart, because I have it all in singles. But now that Kid Krisis is reading the Golden Age omnibus, I think she's on Golden Age 5, I'm like, oh, maybe I do want, because maybe I do want all the omnibuses, especially now that they just in quick succession did like the Rucka omnibus and the John Byrne omnibus, which it just felt like for a while was going to take decades to get there. And they did Silver Age 2 and 3. I'm like, now this thing, I didn't just want to, like, I didn't want the Gail Simone omnibus because I'm like, it's one omnibus that's like 50 years into Wonder Woman. But now that it feels like we really might get all of Wonder Woman, now my tune is changing. So that's in my cart. And I'm always flirting with buying books of magic. I'm not the hugest Sandman fan, but I'm just somebody who always wanted a complete collection of everything Sandman. And it's just attractive that it's almost all an omnibus. We're literally just missing Black Orchid and like a mini series omnibus, which we'll probably never get this at this point. Fuck you, Neil Gaiman. But real people are more important than my comic book collection. But it's just so attractive to me to have it all on my shelf as somebody who like grew up in the 90s where all that stuff was cool. Oh, and the Dreaming. We still don't have the Dreaming. So yeah, so I always am putting books of magic omnibuses in and out of my cart. And I remember when Omnibus 2 like briefly was out of stock. They must have restocked it from somewhere because it was gone for like 3 or 4 months. I was like, God damn it, Krisis. You should have just bought it. But now that it's back, I'm like, oh, I don't know. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a book that I might never actually sit down and read. I'm only on like issue 45 of Sandman. Turns out Sandman not actually that great. The direct market edition of Simonson's Thor Marvel sold out. I can't talk. The direct market edition for Simonson's Thor Marvel Masterwork sold out quick. Well, I think they really short print the direct market. They literally just print exactly what stores pre-order. So like if IST orders 2 extra, that's all there is to sell. Whereas I think other the normal print run of a Masterwork, they print some to like stock at stores or whatever. I really think they just print to the pre-orders with the direct market one. Lust for Life. That's right, Iggy Pop. I do have a Lust for Life. I do. And, I don't ever want to represent new channel shirt. Krisis loves the bull. I did get some new shirts to wear. I never want to portray that I'm this, like, perfect robot human. Like, I have days that I hate shit. I have days that I am unmotivated. I have days I should have been working on a comic guide and didn't. But I do genuinely love, I really have worked so hard to have everything in my life be something I enjoy. And maybe that's to my detriment. Maybe I should have been doing less stuff I enjoy and I would be happier later. But I have a pretty awesome mix of stuff. And I just try to appreciate that every day. You would love me to do a short stream talking about my DC poll votes. Again, I figured it out to a top 30, but even at my top 30, the number 30 book is a book I still might not buy. Like, Logan, I might still do it. I might do it later this week. I might just do it as my Moment of Krisis next week. But I'm telling you, it's just every Wonder Woman book, every Wildstorm book, and every Sandman book. That's it. There's no other book. I maybe have one Hawkman book by Tony Isabella, but it's just... If you go through the slides when we present them and you just tick every Wonder Woman book, every Wildstorm book, and every Sandman book, that's my top 30. That's all I would buy because those are the only things I buy in oversize from DC. So I might still do it and talk about it, but I'm like, do you need me to hear me talk about the order I would put these 15 Wildstorm books in? Like, is that fascinating? So what am I feeling on the Steven Universe ending OG in future? I love Steven Universe. I think it's so important and it was so great for kids. It taught so many great lessons about consent, about identity, about the mutability of self and how we are changing all of the time. Leave aside gender. Just we're always changing and we can always manifest a new self-image, a new way we want to be and exist. I think it's one of the best pieces of screen media that has been made. And I know there was this pushback for a while in the later 2010s of like, adults only think Steven Universe is good. Engage with adult media. But here's the thing. There's something truly magical about kids media that resonates for adults and like really says something meaningful while being funny, while being well written, while being beautiful, right? There's just something special and timeless about that 100 really cool, really adult shows never capture that same magic. And I never want to be somebody who only likes kid shows and kid stuff, but I do think we went through a wonder years in the 2010s with so many shows, some of which I know really well. I think She-Ra was one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. I hold She-Ra up to the level of The Good Place. Like, it was that funny. It was that dense with mythology. The voice acting was that good. But it's not like I feel like that about every cartoon, But I know there's other things I know people like Adventure Time. I never really watched that. People like, and then even adult-oriented cartoons like BoJack Horseman. But I just think cartoons have this stigma. And when some people see people saying, like, Steven Universe is one of the best pieces of media of the last 20 years, which I absolutely believe, they're like, oh, you're just one of those adults who, like, only likes kid stuff. Like, live in the real world. No, that's Steven Universe exists more in the real world and has more to say about the real world and more lessons about the real world than 100 prestige TV dramas. And that's my feeling on Steven Universe. All right, Lance has got to head out. Everybody's got to head out. We've been here, and Stoops is just laughing. Logan Wayne loaded. I will say that was that my number one? That was, I think Dreaming was number one, and that was number two. Or number two. This is known. It's not like a shock. Like, I'm not spoiling if I do a vote stream. The two books I want the most are Wonder Woman by Mester Lobes and Dreaming. I think I probably put Dreaming at number one because Dreaming has never been collected well, whereas Mester Lobes has been in trades, so I probably put that at like 2 or 3, but it's the one that I want the most. Like, if there's one DC Omnibus that I would just pay full cover price tomorrow, it is the Mester Lobes Wonder Woman, because I revere, favorite PJ Harvey. PJ Harvey is such a huge influence on me. I originally, hilariously, I bought the Rid of Me 4-track demos before I actually had Rid of Me, because it was just what Borders had at the time. So I have every PJ, I have every song she's ever done. I have every soundtrack she's ever been on. I have every demos record. I worship her. I've seen her live several times. I worship PJ Harvey. Favorite album cover. Dry is cool. Rid of Me is cool. Story, they're all of a period. Oh, this is painful. I guess Dry. But I don't know. Also, isn't the title track from Dry on Rid of Me? Right? The song Dry isn't on Dry. It's on. I love that song. It's got dun, 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 love that. You leave me dry. Love that song. We could have a whole PJ Harvey stream. So here's the thing. Since we're in the back half, we're only the people who are up late at night watching. Would you be upset if you got a notification from this channel and it was not a comic book stream? And I would say in the title, not comics, like in brackets at the end, right? But like, Garbage, my favorite band, I really want to do a stream where I talk about all of their discography because I own everything from them, or I rank all of their songs. But I also would love to do that for like Lady Gaga or PJ Harvey. So I like really kind of want to do an all music stream, and I'm definitely going to do one from the 25th anniversary of CK in August. But like, I just want to know from your perspective as the faithful who like are subscribed, would you be like, oh, now I'm going to unnotify because I don't want to get these notifications? Or would you, if you got one of those like every 2 or 3 weeks, would you be like, oh, that Krisis, I don't know this band, but that's cool. Like, what would be your level of feelings about that? Edward Billiot voted for Bronze Age Wonder Woman. That was also in my top 10. And it's interesting because DC has only broken ground on Bronze Age for a few lines. Like Justice League, did anything else? Flash is like there, but they haven't started yet. So Wonder Woman would actually, and all those House of Mystery books, but I'm talking about like the superhero line. So Green Lantern, Flash, they're all right there because they've already finished their Silver Age. Technically, Green Lantern, they have done some Bronze Age, but it's just not called Bronze Age. I'm really curious because I think Wonder Woman's Bronze Age material is actually held in pretty high regard compared to Superman and well, Batman's is. Superman's not so much. So I'm actually very interested to see if they push ahead to Bronze Age for Wonder Woman. Yeah, rid of me for Stoops. Like Prime Simpsons. I think you're talking about the kind of like goodness of cartoons and how a really good cartoon, there's like nothing wrong or bad about liking that cartoon. Bunkmaster B, still not home yet. Can I vap for another hour? No, I'm almost out of voice right now, and I have to talk for 4 hours on that stream tomorrow. So we're nearing the end, my friend, but I just want to get to all the comments. PJ Harvey, Rid of Me, great. Yeah, I love Rid of Me is the one where like her hair, I'm going to mess everything up, is where her hair is flipping over on the cover, and that's iconic to me, and I do that every time. Fun fact, Krisis lore, every time before the stream, I take my hair out of the bun and it's still a little bit wet and it falls over my shoulders and I get it into this shape. The first thing I do is stand in front of the mirror and whip my hair over my head and picture that I am the cover of PJ Harvey's Rid of Me. That is how foundational PJ Harvey is for me. Did I see your vote? Oh, like you share? I didn't see you share it. Maybe on your Make Edition. I maybe don't recall. James is ready to leave. James is like, come on, it's closing time. He's like shutting the blinds. He's sweeping the floor. He's like, there's the website. There's the Patreon. Okay. But everybody's saying goodbye. So, and people are in for a music stream. Ignore that notification, but happy for those who show up. That's good. I probably just wouldn't tune in, but go for it anyway. Yeah, I don't ever want to annoy you or abuse the notifications. I'm like, because I think I am like that. If I start getting notifications and I'm like, what is this nonsense? I get really angry and I like unsubscribe from stuff, but I know that I have a very particular neurodivergent brain with very specific wiring. So it's good to remind me sometimes like, Krisis, we're not going to hate you if you like give us one extra notification a week. People are always like, posting your Patreon more. I'm like, what if it gets annoying? They're like, you haven't posted for 5 months. So I'm always trying to like deprogram my concerns. And some, it seems like nobody would really be bothered. The D&D stream, I was putting some, I love everything that I do, Bitty Ma. I know exactly what I would do. I know exactly where it would be set. I know exactly where I want to be on the stream. I'm hoping that August to September, I can kind of do like a 25th anniversary extravaganza and do a couple of these streams. I keep teasing that I want to do, maybe do a D&D stream, do the dessert stream with Jess, do a music stream. So even if I don't find time before then, but that means I have to be caught up by then. So I have 2 months to get caught up by August 26th, because then I need to be caught up in order to be doing all that. Yeah, you know, Jarn, for the music stream, I wonder would I want to do it as a pre-record, because there's a lot of, like, if it's going to be a ranking, it's like so much I'd have to prepare, but I hate editing videos so much, and I like the idea of seeing chat and seeing interactions as I do it. It just feels like it would be so canned if I just, like, recorded and edited. I'm not trying to be, what is that one channel called? Mike the Snare or whatever. Great channel about music. But, like, I don't find myself interested in those deep dive essays about music, partially for the same reason that I don't watch other people do comics criticism, because, like, I'm into comics criticism if I'm going to learn something from it, but so often it's people who I know more than, or I know as much as, and like their perspective is like not opening new doors for me. And I feel similarly about music criticism. I have a very, very high bar for people who I would actually listen to talking about music for 10 minutes. And so it's weird for me because, like, I would never make that video because I would never want to watch that video. The thing I would want to watch is somebody, like, counting down Lady Gaga songs and, like, arguing with the chat about it. But, like, you're not primarily on this channel to watch me talk about Lady Gaga songs. So would the chat, like, even do that? So that's why I've kind of, like, always struggled. I've had that on my outline to do Uncrushing Krisis, that kind of, like, ranking from the beginning thing since 2018. So there's some things that literally have been in development. Like, even this show, I started kind of teasingly kind of doing this in 2018. And here we are in 2025 and I'm fully doing it. So there's been some things that have been simmering in my creative life that I've been waiting to do for, like, coming to decades. Okay. And Logan Wayne saying, I would watch a non-comic stream. Well, folks, we're at the end. You can catch me on YouTube a lot this week. I'm going to be on Near Mint Condition tomorrow at 6 o'clock at night. We're going to reveal the DC poll. They're wild. No spoilers. But there's a lot of stuff in there that wasn't in there last year. And I was very surprised. So tune in. And those rules are going to DC. Omar has met with DC and DC has been like, we want to see the results. So this is real and it's happening. And I have now 22 hours to put together the slides. So then I think I'm supposed to be on OmniDog's Vault this week too. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, but it's our replacement jamming on comics stream because we missed it last week because Freddie had some cool gig that he was doing. So we'll probably talk about that and talk about music and comic books and everything. So that's the other thing. I do once a month get to talk about music on Jess's channel. Everybody seems like that, but we blend it in. It's a melange with the comics. And then I'll just spoil since you're all here at the end. There's a bunch of streams I really, really want to do that I just haven't had the time for. I really want to go through this month's DCBS catalog with you. So I'd love to do that. I don't know if we're going to have time for that this week. I have to do catch-up streams on all these additional weeks of comics. I don't know if there's time for that. I did want to talk about my DC poll choices, but I have a different concept for that. I don't want to fully spoil it. I read it by James over the weekend, but it's related to the DC Omnibus poll, but it would be kind of like what I want to find a way to keep talking about collected editions on the channel. Look at that sunlight. Oh my gosh. And I think I've found a way to do that, but it's going to take some work. So I have to do the catching up first. I do want to do a Masterworks stream where I go in depth about each of the Masterworks lines and where I think it should end, what I think the economics are. So there's a lot of extra streams I want to do right now. And I have to catch up on all this stuff. But the poll's over. After today, poll work is done. And I also I'm like 6 weeks behind on CK new releases post too. But there's potentially a lot coming up. Also, I got all this new makeup that I want to wear. So I have to do more streams if I want to do more. And I got new brushes. So if I want to do more makeup, I have to do more streams. But that's me. It's been so great hanging out with you. Thanks for sticking with me. Happy Father's Day to those of you that are fathers or are celebrating with your fathers and your loved ones. Anybody can be a father figure in your life, including George Michael. Let me be a father figure. Until I see you next, whether that's tomorrow, Near Mint Condition, or next week back here on the channel, because we're going to do another poll list and we'll keep doing it until we catch up. Please don't have a crisis. Unless, of course, it's me, in which case, that's probably fine. Until then, take care. Be safe in the world. Trans rights are humans' rights. Black lives matter. Feminism is rights for all people. And there are no kings in America. Good evening.